Chapter 46:11. I understand. I will go and warn Su Lingchong now, in case they make their own decisions and ruin our plan. The mysterious man nodded. Okay, go ahead. You have been doing well recently. The biochemical agent for nascent soul stage is finally done. Although there is still a slight flaw in the stability aspect, this kind of thing is inevitable. At most, we will just lose a few more people. This price is still bearable. Miss Luan had a rare, relaxed smile on her face. Thank you for the compliment, Miss Luan. This is my duty. The mysterious man lowered his head slightly. Hee, you are not arrogant and rash. This is what I admire about you. You are much more reliable than the other mediocre people. If there are a few more people like you, our center will have great plans. The smile on Miss Luan's face became even wider, and then she said, The nascent soul stage biochemical potion is only the first step. The next goal is the profound ascension stage. The difficulty of this breakthrough is much more difficult than the nascent soul stage. There must be no mistakes in this matter. The 2 idiots in the Devil Cold Sea are useless. You should choose 2 more people to go. Then, how about Su Lingchong and Meng Tong? The mysterious man thought for a while and suggested. These 2 were the ones he had the highest hopes for, and it was rare for them to complement each other. As long as they were trained well, they would definitely become his right-hand men in the future. Since Miss Luan wanted to change the supervisor of Devil Linghui, it was a rare opportunity for the 2 of them to train, and at the same time they could avoid Lin Yi. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Let me recommend someone to you. That Zhong Pingliang is not bad. Let's promote him to a small leader. Miss Luan thought for a while and suddenly said, Huh. The mysterious man was stunned when he heard that. Miss Luan was such a high and mighty person. Why would she pay attention to a small fry like Zhong Pingliang? This was a little strange. Although Zhong Pingliang had also joined the center, and it was not a long time, not a short time, at least 2 years ago, he had never really entered the eyes of the mysterious man. At most, he was a cannon fodder. If it wasn't for his good memory, even he might not have remembered this name. He was even stunned for a while before he finally remembered it, let alone Miss Luan. What, do you have any objections? Miss Luan glanced at the mysterious man. No, this subordinate understands. The mysterious man quickly nodded. Although he wasn't expecting Pinliang, it was a small matter that didn't affect the bigger picture. They were in need of manpower anyway, and there was no need to worry about not having enough space to promote people like Meng Tong. Oh, by the way, I heard that little Pao is about to come out of seclusion. When the time comes, I'll ask him to come over and help you. You 2 can discuss and handle everything. I might have to leave for the eastern continent soon, Miss Luan said. Junior brother Pao has come out of seclusion? Great, I've been waiting for him for a long time. The mysterious man's eyes lit up when he heard that. Although junior brother Pao would definitely take away some of the power he had now. If he could take the opportunity to make friends with this person, it would be more beneficial than harmful in the long run. Yeah, this Zhong Pingliang I was talking about was actually the one who recommended him to me. You just have to be careful. You and little Pao are the core members of the center. When the time comes, you must work together sincerely. I don't want the 2 of you to fall out. Do you understand? Miss Luan urged. I understand. Junior brother Pao and I hit it off very well. And junior brother Pao is a person who cares about the overall situation. Everything he does is important to the center. I will definitely take care of the matters on the North Island with junior brother Pao. I won't let Miss Luan have any worries. The mysterious man solemnly promised. The North Island is only secondary. In the future, you can slowly let Su Lingchong and Zhong Pingliang take care of it. Both of you have to focus on the South Island. I have something for you to do. Miss Luan shook her head slightly. Yes, the mysterious man nodded heavily. Although he was wondering what kind of task there was on the South Island that required him and junior brother Pao to do it so seriously, He just suppressed his doubts in his heart. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask, and don't look at what you shouldn't look at. This was the most important survival rule in the center. Okay, if there's nothing else, you can leave first. Miss Luan's eyes then returned to the supercomputer. Any kind of biochemical medicine needed to go through countless calculations and evolutions. Only after the plan was formed could it enter the formal experimental stage. She was now preparing for the biochemical medicine of the Xianxian stage. Yes, I will leave now. The mysterious man immediately bowed and left the room. Until he left the room, a trace of puzzlement and doubt appeared on his emotionless face. He was still wondering why junior brother Pao suddenly recommended Zhong Pingliang. With his influence and control over the North Island, nothing could escape from his surveillance. As far as he knew, Zhong Pingliang had never shown anything strange since he joined the Yingxin Pavilion. He gave people the impression that he was just a follower of Kong Mingming. After that, he became Su Lingchong's subordinate because of Kong Mingming. Other than that, he had no other connections. Pinliang himself, on the other hand, had decent talent, but he wasn't that outstanding. At least, he couldn't be compared to Lin Yi, a freak who kept rising up miraculously. He'd been quiet all this time, and he hadn't done anything earth-shattering. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have had anything to do with Brother Pao at all. Could it be that they had crossed paths in the secular world? The mysterious man was suddenly shocked. In his eyes, everything about Zhong Pingliang was too ordinary. After thinking about it, the only place where he could have crossed paths with junior brother Pao seemed to be the secular world. However, he could do whatever he wanted in the North Island. He didn't know anything about the secular world. However, even if he was suspicious, he wouldn't do anything to Zhong Pingliang. Since junior brother Pao wanted to help Zhong Pingliang, he naturally wouldn't offend him for such a small matter. It was just a small effort to push the boat along with the current, and he could also get a favor. No matter how he looked at it, it was not a loss. The reason why the mysterious man valued junior brother Pao so much was not only because of his strong background, but also because he heard that junior brother Pao had obtained the core inheritance of the ruins of the Day and Day sect. His current strength was very powerful, and he might not even be a match for him. In Heavenly Island, strength was king. If junior brother Pao only had a strong background, even if the mysterious man valued him, he wouldn't care so much. At most, he would just use him. However, if junior brother Pao had both strength and background, it was a different story. It was worth making a good friend. Chapter 46:12. After returning to his room, the mysterious man quickly sent a message to Su Lingchong, asking him to take Zhong Pingliang to a secret room. Of course, it wasn't the core of the North Island base, but another secret room to hide from the public. Let Zhong Pingliang go with us. Su Lingchong looked at the contents of the note and couldn't help but be stunned. He thought that the mysterious man was ready to deal with Lin Yi. Why did he suddenly send such a strange order? Was it written wrongly? It was more likely that he and Meng Tong were together. Although he guessed so in his heart, Su Lingchong didn't dare to change the order of the mysterious man, even if he had the guts. Who knew if there was a deeper meaning in it? Pingliang, you come with me. The higher-ups want to see you. Su Lingchong suppressed his confusion and announced in public. At this time, the others hadn't left yet. Meng Tong and Kong Mingming heard it and suddenly felt strange. Everyone's eyes involuntarily focused on Zhong Pingliang. Zhong Pingliang looked blank on the surface, but at the moment he was horrified. In an instant, he was covered in a cold sweat. His first reaction when he heard this was, "Fuck, did the fact that I was a spy get exposed?" In terms of status, he was only slightly higher than people like Ma Daqiang, not to mention Su Lingchong. Even Meng Tong was far from him. At most, he was about the same as Kong Xiaoming, or even worse. After all, Kong Xiaoming had Elder Xianxian as his backer in Middle Island, and Zhong Pingliang had nothing. Since joining the organization until now, not only Zhong Pingliang, but other people including Meng Tong and Kong Mingming had never been officially met by the mysterious man. This had always been a special honor for Su Lingchong. If it wasn't exposed, how could this opportunity fall into his hands inexplicably? Facing the envious eyes of everyone, Zhong Pingliang couldn't help but feel like his heart was beating wildly. It really felt like something big was going to happen. There couldn't be a second explanation other than the exposure. Asking him to follow Su Lingchong to meet the mysterious man. Wasn't it obvious that he was walking into a trap? Pingliang's expression froze, and a chill ran down his spine. His legs grew heavy, and he couldn't move for a long time. Let's go. What are you waiting for? You look like you've never seen the world before. Su Lingchong looked at him strangely, thinking that he was just too happy to contain his joy. Ah, yes. Pingliang suppressed the fear in his heart when he saw everyone looking at him with a complicated expression. He couldn't show it on his face, he could only take it one step at a time. Under the cover of the night, Su Lingchong and Pingliang avoided the guard's line of sight as they made their way to a barren slope. There was a dense pine forest at the top of the slope, and the secret room the mysterious man had pointed at was right below it. Pingliang was trembling as he followed behind Su Lingchong. His heart was pounding so hard that it was about to jump out of his throat. There were a few times when he couldn't help but turn around and run away as he looked at the dark, windy night. But he stopped himself in the end. After all, Su Lingchong was much stronger than him, and he couldn't run even if he wanted to. He would only die faster if he was exposed. The two of them waited in the secret room. Pingliang held his breath as he carefully studied the layout of the secret room, planning his escape route in his mind. If it didn't work, he would have to fight to the death. After a tense moment of waiting, a breeze swept past them, and the mysterious man's figure appeared in front of them, still covered in a black robe. No one could see his face and body clearly. Of course, Pingliang didn't dare look at him for too long under these circumstances. He could only lower his head, trying his best not to let the mysterious man see his frozen expression. "Greetings, Senior." Su Lingchong knelt down on one knee. Although he was valued by the mysterious man, he still didn't know who the mysterious man was, nor did he know his position. He only knew that the mysterious man had a very high position in the center, and so he could only greet him with a vague title like Senior. Pingliang didn't dare to be slow. He imitated Su Lingchong and bowed, at the same time taking the opportunity to bury his head even deeper, afraid that the mysterious man would see through his face. The mysterious man was silent for a moment. He could feel his gaze falling on Pingliang, looking him up and down with suspicion. Suddenly he opened his mouth. "Zhong Pingliang, listen to my order." Pingliang jumped in fright, and his breathing stopped. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop his hands and feet from shaking. What the hell would he was afraid of happened? Did he really get exposed? Su Lingchong, who was beside him, was also stunned. So the order he got wasn't a mistake. He really was looking for Pingliang. Since when did this kid enter the eyes of the higher-ups? That's really strange. The mysterious man, on the other hand, looked at Pingliang surprised. The guy couldn't hide his nervousness at all. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. The kid didn't look special at all. Why would Junior Pao think so highly of him? The higher-ups have ordered that Pingliang will be promoted to the center's special envoy in the North Island from today onwards. He will be on the same level as Su Lingchong. His main task is to assist me and another master to manage the North Island branch together, the mysterious man announced faintly. Ah! Pingliang was completely stunned. He was even prepared to die, but he didn't expect it to be something like this. The center's special envoy in the North Island? Did he just get a promotion for no reason? Pingliang rubbed his head, confused. He didn't do anything recently, and he didn't make any contributions to the center. Why did such a big pie suddenly fall on his head? It wasn't just Zhong Pingliang. Even Su Lingchong was shocked speechless. He looked at the mysterious man in confusion. What was going on? How did Pin Liang get promoted all of a sudden? He didn't make any contributions at all, and suddenly he was on the same level as him? This senior. There's a saying that two tigers can't share the same mountain. This Pin Liang is my follower, and your words made him on the same level as me. It's not easy for me to manage and convince the others. Su Lingchong couldn't help but complain. He didn't have anything against Zhong Pingliang at first, but his follower was suddenly on equal footing with him. Anyone would be pissed off, especially someone as prideful as Su Lingchong. How could he tolerate something like this? Besides, he was the only candidate for the North Island's special envoy. Now that Pin Liang suddenly appeared, there were two special envoys. Wasn't this clearly stealing power from his hands? Floating astronomy. Chapter 46:13. Power was an extension of strength, and it was the foundation of Su Lingchong's position in the center. No matter who dared to touch the power in his hands, that person was Su Lingchong's enemy. How could he allow others to sleep beside his bed? At that moment, Su Lingchong even unconsciously felt murderous. If Zhong Pingliang dared to stand in his way, he wouldn't mind finding an excuse to make this follower disappear from the face of the earth. What, you have a problem with that? The mysterious man snorted coldly. Although they didn't do anything, the temperature in the secret room suddenly dropped a lot, sending chills down people's backs. Zhong Pingliang recovered from the trembling just now, and this time it was Su Lingchong's turn to be shocked. No, I wouldn't dare. Su Lingchong was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He thought to himself that he was so angry that he lost his head. There was no room for him to interrupt when the mysterious man promoted his subordinates. Once he made the mysterious man dissatisfied, not to mention being the special envoy of the North Island, he wouldn't even be able to keep his life. His life and death were all in the hands of the mysterious man. If there's a next time, don't be the envoy anymore. We're currently lacking nascent soul stage test subjects. The mysterious man looked at him coldly, and when he saw that Su Lingchong was about to kneel on the ground in fear, he explained, "It was Junior Pao who recommended Zhong Pingliang to be the envoy of the North Island. Even if you have any other thoughts, put them away. Don't try anything funny, or even I won't be able to protect you." In fact, putting himself in Su Lingchong's shoes, the mysterious man could understand Su Lingchong's feelings at the moment. In fact, the person he had originally planned was only Su Lingchong, and at most, Meng Tong as his assistant. But now that the higher-ups had hinted, he could only break his original arrangement. So it's Master Pao's recommendation. Su Lingchong instantly became listless, and after hearing the name, he couldn't help but lose his soul. He knew that there was no turning back, and from now on, not only could he not make things difficult for Zhong Pingliang, but he had to change his attitude and build a good relationship with him. He had to throw away his pride and make friends. After all, Master Pao was like a master to him and had the power to decide his life and death, just like the mysterious man. Since it was Master Pao's idea to promote Zhong Pingliang, how could Su Lingchong dare to say no? Master Pao! Pin Liang almost jumped up when he heard this, his eyes widening. If he hadn't lowered his head on purpose, the mysterious man would have noticed something fishy. What the F***CK? The last time he heard this name, Pin Liang couldn't help but wonder if this Master Pao had some sort of connection with Zhang Naipeo. Now he was 70 to 80% sure. His conjecture seemed to be possible. If this great Pao wasn't Zhang Naipeo, then why would he recommend him for no reason at all? Pin Liang didn't have any contact with the people in the center, not a single one of them. If it weren't for that so-called Master Pao wouldn't have even heard of his name, let alone recommended him out of the blue. Zhang Naipeo had suddenly turned into the powerful Master Pao of the center. This unexpected discovery left Pin Liang speechless, even though he hadn't confirmed it yet. But even this 70 to 80% possibility was already incredible. But this Zhang Naipeo wouldn't really betray them, would he? Otherwise, How could he be doing so well in the center? Fuck, he would have to ask him if he had the chance to see him in the future. This kid better not be ungrateful. Pin Liang felt the mysterious man's gaze on him. Pin Liang reacted and pretended to be grateful. Thank you for the recommendation, Senior. I will do my best to complete this mission. All right. I don't have any special mission for you yet. What you need to do next is to get used to it and ask Su Lingchong if there's anything you don't understand. Of course, you can also use the blood bat to contact me directly. The mysterious man nodded faintly. Su Lingchong couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Being able to contact the mysterious man directly meant that they were on equal footing now. A minute ago, he was just an insignificant follower, and now he had to be on good terms with the mysterious man. This kind of feeling was kept up no matter how he thought about it. Pin Liang smirked at Su Lingchong and said playfully, "Then I'll be in your care in the future, Chong bro." "Not at all, not at all." Pin Liang Yu. "Oh no, Liang bro, please forgive me for what happened in the past. In the future, we brothers will work together sincerely and strive not to disappoint Senior and Master Pao." Su Lingchong smiled awkwardly. Pin Liang chuckled, but in his mind he was thinking about how to pass this news to Lin Yi. Besides, now that he was the so-called envoy of the Northern Island, he needed a few subordinates to order around, or else he would still be under Su Lingchong's control. Looking at the group of people under Su Lingchong's command, Meng Tong was Su Lingchong's loyal follower, so there was no need to consider that. On the other hand, Kong Mingming was too scheming, and he always thought that he was above Pin Liang, so there was no way to rope him in. Then the only ones left were Yu, Zhe, Nan Tianba, Southern Sky Gate, and that half-crippled Ma Daoqiang. Especially Ma Daoqiang, he had water in his head, so he should be able to pull it in easily. Pin Liang officially took up his post in the secret room, and on the other side, the first residence of the Blue Cloud Pavilion was brightly lit and filled with laughter. Not only were Lin Yi and the others gathered, but even Hong Zhong had specially rushed over after receiving the news. Originally, with his sensitive identity as the vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he couldn't enter the inner sect of the three great pavilions as he pleased. But Hong Zhong and Lin Yi's personal relationship was already known by everyone. Plus, he had a good relationship with the three great pavilions' higher-ups. So he wasn't afraid of breaking the taboo this time. No one would cause trouble for him and Lin Yi for such a small matter, unless that person was sick in the head and was tired of living. When the banquet was ready, Lin Yi sat at the head of the table and Hong Zhong sat on his left. After all, whether it was status or strength, he was the highest here after Lin Yi, so he deserved to sit in this position. Behind Hong Zhong was Lu Bianren and senior brother Kubai, while on the right of Lin Yi sat Shanghai Laner, Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and Li Zhengming. It was not an exaggeration to use the phrase, a galaxy of talents, to describe everyone present here. Needless to say, Lin Yi, Hong Zhong, and Sheng Guanlan were either big shots or heaven's proud sons and daughters. As for the rest of the people here, compared to other Clear Cloud Pavilion disciples, each one of them was an undeniable elite. Floating astronomy. Chapter 46:14. If this continued, these people's futures would be limitless. Who knew how long it would be before they became the pillars of Blue Cloud Pavilion? Perhaps Blue Cloud Pavilion would rise again in their hands, following Zhang Liju's era to rule the north again. At that time, people would give this post-Zhang's era a new name, Lin Yi's era. The banquet started, and everyone looked at Lin Yi quietly, waiting for him to start. Lin Yi smiled as he looked at everyone's faces. It's been 2 years, and I'm very happy to see that everyone is doing well. There's nothing more important than this, and we should be content with what we have. Come, let's toast to our reunion after such a long time. Cheers! Everyone smiled and raised their glasses, and even little Curly Bear finished his glass. Of course, he wasn't drinking spirit wine, but the spirit fruit juice that everyone had prepared for him and Shengguan Laner. Curly Bear's drunkenness wasn't something to be messed with, And if this little guy got drunk, it'd be a huge joke. Little brother, hurry up and tell us about your experiences in the South. I can't wait. Shangguan Laner said impatiently. Yeah, boss. Hurry up and tell us. We're all waiting to hear about your legendary experiences. Qiao Hongkai and the others added. Before this, it was basically Lin Yi asking them about their situations, but now it was the other way around. That's right. I'm also very curious about how you escaped from Shishan Old Zone. If you came back a few days later, I would have personally gone to Southern Continent. After all this time, Honest Chai kept saying that he couldn't find any news about you, and I thought he was a fence-sitter, disloyal when he saw the situation wasn't right. This time, I wanted to go ask him about it, but luckily you came back today. Otherwise, I would have blamed a good person wrongly. Hong Zhong said with a smile. Lin, he couldn't help but feel touched. The Southern Continent was publicly recognized as a place of trouble. Unless there were special circumstances, most people would not be willing to go there, especially for a prominent figure like Hong Zhong. Going to the South Continent in person was risking his life, because this would inevitably give the enemies and competitors an opportunity to take advantage of. They didn't dare to play dirty tricks in the North Island and the Middle Island, but in Nanzhou State, they could do it unscrupulously and openly. Anyway, they could easily evade the responsibility with a word. Even if they took the opportunity to kill Hong Zhong, they would not have any worries. After all, murder and arson were too common in Nanzhou State, and there was no way to investigate it. So where do you want me to start? You should all know what happened before we met West Mountain Old Sect Master, right? Lin, he couldn't help but smile. He knew that the north side of the island had sent people to investigate his whereabouts, and it wasn't just the eyes and ears of the clear cloud pavilion, but also the soaring sky pavilion. Otherwise, there was no way Shangguan Tianhua would know his whereabouts so clearly. Start from the beginning. Shangguan Laner hurriedly said. I just know some general news about you, junior brother, but I don't know the details. Also, why didn't Sister Xiaotao come back with you? You still don't know about Xiaotao? Lin, he could not help but be slightly stunned. Huang Xiaotao's matter was quite sensational in the South Continent. Although it was said that they were far apart from each other, there should be some news about it, right? I don't know. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads. In fact, they felt strange from the beginning when they saw Linny. It was just that they were too excited just now and forgot to ask. After all, they had no personal relationship with Huang Xiaotao. They had only met her a few times. Only Shanghai Laner was close to Huang Xiaotao. Therefore, everyone usually only paid attention to the news of Lin Yi, but never deliberately inquired about Huang Xiaotao's situation. Well, then I will start from the beginning. Lin Yi paused for a while, then began to say, the first day Xiaotao and I arrived in the South Continent, we met with a small problem. We had a conflict with a local bully in the Weiqian Ocean. Fortunately, the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan, helped us out. After that, the two of us took the opportunity to join the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and became escorts. And our first escort mission came from the local Weiqian branch of the Hong Merchant Association. Wei Xiaodong's matter. This old man did not know his character well and almost harmed you. I am truly sorry, Hong Zhong said apologetically. Elder Hong, you are exaggerating. The reason why you introduced Wei Xiaodong to me was for my own good. His change of heart is his problem. It has nothing to do with you. I can still distinguish between good and bad. So why do you have to blame yourself? Furthermore, he didn't really cause me any trouble. In the end, he promoted Honest Chai. To you and me, this is a rare good thing. Lin Yi smiled and waved his hand disapprovingly. That may be the case, but a mistake is a mistake. I must always remember this matter and remind myself to keep my eyes open in the future. I must not repeat the same mistake and be deceived by such a vile person. Hong Zhong sighed. Wei Xiaodong was his old friend of many years, but such a thing happened. No matter who it was, they would not be in a good mood. "What are you two talking about? Who is Wei Xiaodong? How did he almost harm you?" Shanghai Laner and the rest were confused. "Haha, Wei Xiaodong is not a stranger. He is the shopkeeper of the local Weiqian branch. I originally thought he was a good person, but who would have thought that he was so heartless? On one hand, he had the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency escort the goods, and on the other hand, he contacted pirates to intercept his goods. After taking back his goods, he asked the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to compensate him at the original price. As a shopkeeper of the Hong Merchant Association, he actually did business without any capital. Just thinking about it makes me speechless." Lin Yi laughed bitterly. He stole his own goods and wanted the escort agency to compensate him at the original price? To think that there would be such a black-hearted bastard. He deserves to die. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. What happened after that? "Little junior brother, did you beat these bastards into a sorry state?" Shanghai Laner's eyes lit up with excitement. In her eyes, Lin Yi had always been an omnipotent existence. Of course, he had to show his skills at this time. "No, they sent 4 pirates, and each of them was much stronger than the 4 of us escorts. In addition, our chief escort gave up resisting first, so we could only choose to endure it." Lin Yi shook his head and then said, "After that, those pirates left us in Jinduan City. Xiao Tao and I couldn't go back to the Weiqian waters for a while, so we could only stay in Jinduan City. We also went to the Lufeng Forest in the South Island to explore, and we had a lot of unexpected gains." July 13th, Aichi's Campus Belle's bodyguard will be released. For more news, please follow Fishman22. Chapter 46:15. Lin Yi did not elaborate on the details of the adventure. Firstly, it was a long story. Secondly, he would definitely prepare treasures such as nascent ginseng and star ink milk for everyone. But there was no need to announce it in public. As the old saying goes, an innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. Who knew if there were any surveillance arrays in residence, number 1 of the Blue Cloud Pavilion? What happened after that? The crowd continued to ask. After that, when we returned to Zhanduan City from Lufeng Forest, we thought that we would be able to return to Wei Arc City. However, we didn't expect to bump into the East Continent's Morning Star Academy that came to select their disciples. The entire pier was cordoned off, and we couldn't leave at all. Lin Yi laughed. East Continent's Morning Star Academy. The crowd was stunned when they heard the name. Everyone else had a confused expression on their faces. Only Hong Zhong and Shanghai Laner were not at a loss. They were just a little surprised. "Then, did you participate in the selection?" Hong Zhong and Shangguan Laner asked almost at the same time. Needless to say, Hong Zhong, although Shangguan Laner had never been to the East Continent, given her upbringing in the Shangguan family, she would never forget the most important place among the 5 Heaven Stage Islands, the East Continent. Others might not know, but the 2 of them were absolutely clear about the significance of the East Continent Academy. Yes, I thought that since I had nothing to do, I might as well join the crowd to watch the fun. In the end, I was tacitly accepted as a participant. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and shrugged his shoulders. And the result? What was the result? The 2 of them quickly asked. Plus, the result was obvious. I failed, but Xiao Tao was chosen. She became the only direct disciple of the East Sea Godly nun of the Morning Star Academy. It was a heaven-sent opportunity. The other party was a mountain opening stage powerhouse. Lin Yi smiled slightly. Really? That's great. Sister Xiao Tao is really amazing. Shangguan Lan said happily. She was so simple that she would never make people angry. She was happy for Huang Xiaotao from the bottom of her heart. After all, Huang Xiaotao had a miserable life, and it was a dream opportunity for everyone to become the personal disciple of a powerhouse in the mountain opening period. This was probably God's compensation for her. Young hero Lin, how did you fail? That's impossible, right? However, Zhong's focus was not on Huang Xiaotao. He had seen a lot of the world, and the number of people he had met was not something ordinary people could imagine. He had seen hundreds of so-called super geniuses, and if he had to say who could stand out among them, it had to be Lin Yi. There was no doubt about this. Zhong had been to the East Continent and had seen the genius disciples of the academies there. In his opinion, Lin Yi's potential and ability far surpassed those genius disciples. This was not because they had a close relationship or because they loved each other. It was a very objective truth. Since even Huang Xiaotao could become a direct disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea, how could Lin Yi, whose talent was at least 10 times greater than hers, fail? If that was the case, Zhong could only think that the higher-ups of the Morning Star Academy had a screw loose. When Zhong said so, Shanghai Laner also finally reacted and could not help but say strangely, "That's right, even my grandfather's full of praise for little junior brother. How could little junior brother fail? I've heard it from my grandfather. In the past, there was a school in the East Continent that wanted to recruit senior brother Ram, but senior brother Ram only went for a month and came back. He looked down on the genius disciples there. Grandfather's evaluation of junior brother is no lower than senior brother Ram. That's right. It's a joke that boss didn't get selected with his talent. Those people must have been blind," Xiao Hongkai and the others said. They didn't know much about East Continent College, but they knew that East Continent College wasn't a big deal, although they did not know much about the East Continent Academy. With Ramjie as a comparison, their boss Lin Yi would not lose to Ramjie no matter how they looked at it. Looking at the indignant attitude of the crowd, Lin Yi was both amused and touched. He could only blink his eyes and said, "Once I'm chosen, I have to go to the East Continent like Xiaotao. I don't really want to go, so—" "Oh, so that's how it is. I knew it was impossible not to be chosen. Ha." The crowd suddenly understood and one by one laughed. The matter of the East Continent Morning Star Academy selection is known by everyone in the South Continent. It's a big deal, but you guys really don't know anything about Xiaotao here? Lin Yi asked curiously. From what he understood, Huang Xiaotao's matter was equivalent to a secular student getting into a famous university. It was a real honor, and logically speaking, the alma mater would definitely publicize it. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. The crowd looked at each other and shook their heads. My grandfather should know, but every time I asked him, I only mentioned your name. I didn't specifically ask Sister Xiaotao, so he didn't tell me, Shanghai Laner said thoughtfully. Lin Yi nodded, but still felt strange. The higher-ups of the North Island must have known about Huang Xiaotao's matter. After all, she was an inner disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion before this. But what was strange was that the higher-ups all kept silent about it. Not only did Shanghai Tianhua not say anything, but even Blue Cloud Pavilion didn't say anything. This was a bit unreasonable. Now that Blue Cloud Pavilion was so weak, it would be good to use Huang Xiaotao's matter to boost their morale. I know a little about this, Zhong suddenly said. Seeing that everyone was looking at him in confusion, he smiled and said, "Actually, the East Continent Academy will come out to select disciples every year. Not only the South Continent, but other heaven-level islands, including the Middle Island, will also go. But you guys have been here for so long. Have you heard of anyone from the 3 pavilions in the North Island going to the East Continent Academy? Or have you seen the East Continent Academy come to the North Island to select disciples?" No. Everyone shook their heads. It could be explained that Lin Yi and the others had only joined for a short time, but Lu Bianren and senior brother Ku Bai had been here for so many years, but they still knew nothing about it. This was not normal. As far as I know, the reason why the academies in the East Continent don't come to the North Island to select disciples publicly is actually because they have an agreement with the 3 pavilions in the North Island. I don't know the specific content of the agreement, and I only know a general idea. Basically, the right of recommendation is given to the 3 pavilions in the North Island. The East Continent Academy doesn't have to come to the selection in person, but the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions will recommend on their behalf. Hong Zhong paused, then looked at Shanghai Laner and said, "The initiator of this agreement is your grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua." Everyone was stunned, but they were not surprised. If the 3 pavilions in the North Island were to recommend a big shot who could best represent the North Island, it would be Shanghai Tianhua. If it were someone else, even the Pavilion Master of Mysterious Pavilion and the Pavilion Master of Blue Cloud Pavilion, it would be difficult to convince the public. In other words, the matter of recommending genius disciples to the East Continent Academy is only discussed by the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions, but it has never been announced to ordinary disciples? Lin Yi asked thoughtfully. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 46:16. C_T, that's right. Every time a genius disciple from the North Island is recommended to East Continent College, it will be said that he's going out to perform a task. There are 2 reasons for this. First, although East Continent College isn't a traditional sect force, and theoretically, he will come back after a period of study. But if this matter is made public, it will inevitably make all the disciples of the 3 pavilions scramble for this recommendation. I believe that everyone will break their heads for this recommendation. If a disciple of a sect only fights to join East Continent College, do you think this sect will have any cohesion or future? Hong Zhong analyzed. Novel download what he said was not groundless. Many sects in Central Island also had the right to recommend, but they didn't keep a low profile like the 3 pavilions in the North Island. For the sake of so-called fairness, they always competed openly. As a result, in the end, few of these geniuses who went to East Continent College returned to serve their sects, because from the beginning, East Continent College was their goal, and sects were simply a springboard for them. How could they come back to serve this springboard after they achieved their goal? But being recommended by the 3 pavilions for further study and being bent on going to East Continent were 2 completely different things. It was like a person in a school in the secular world. Everyone was bent on getting into a better school, and once they got there, they would definitely not return to the original school. But if he was an employee of a company and one day the boss told him to give him a chance to study, the employee would definitely be grateful and return to the company after the study. 800-inch, that makes sense. What's the second reason? Everyone asked. To read this book, please go to. The second reason, of course, is to keep a low profile. For any sect, the more genius disciples it can recommend to East Continent College, the stronger their strength will be in the future. Since it's certain that these disciples will return to the North Island in the future, it's natural to hide them as a trump card. Hong Zhong couldn't help but ask with a smile. I see. Everyone nodded. A trump card was a trump card because it could confuse people and make them fearful. Once it was taken out, it would be known to the public. Not only could it not control people suddenly, but its deterrence would also be greatly reduced. Junior brother, did you separate from Sister Xiaotao after that? Shangguan Laner continued to return to the topic. That's right. Xiaotao left directly with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. As for me, I returned to Velvet Arc City alone. Coincidentally, I ran into those pirates on the way, so I snatched the goods and returned to confront Wei Xiaodong. After that, he promised the equal of Heaven Escort Agency to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency's grand event. You should know about this, right? Lin Yi asked. I know. I heard that Junior brother killed the evil cultivator Wu Baoliang at the grand meeting. As a result, you provoked the West Mountain Old Sect and were chased by him all over the world. Shanghai Laner said. Lu Bianren and the others also nodded. I've heard of the name of the West Mountain Old Sect. It's said that he's the second most powerful person in the West Mountain Evil Sect. He's an unfathomable mountain-opening evil cultivator. Young Hero Lin, it's unbelievable that you could escape from him. Hong Zhong couldn't help but sigh. Only when one reached a certain level could one truly understand how terrifying the giants of the mountain opening period were. He was much more aware of the difficulty involved than the clueless crowd. Haha, actually it's mainly luck. Originally, with my strength, I couldn't have gotten rid of him. However, by chance, I escaped to the South Island, and he didn't dare to go deeper. After all, the spirit beasts are not to be trifled with, so I simply hid in the South Island to cultivate. It wasn't until recently that I completely got rid of the West Mountain old sec surveillance that I was able to escape and return, Linny said in a few words. As for the part about the 5 poison swamp and the 5 evils dragon, there was no need to explain it in detail. It's not easy to hide in the South Island for so long and remain unscathed. It's not something that can be summed up simply by luck. The hardships and sufferings are not something that ordinary people can endure. Young hero Lin, I toast you. Hong Zhong praised. Little junior brother, boss, we toast you together. The others followed. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Lin immediately smiled and drank it in one gulp. By the way, I have a letter for you, young hero Lin, but I just came in a hurry and didn't bring it with me. I'll give it to you tomorrow, Han Zhong said suddenly. Letter? What letter? Lin didn't react for a moment and said in a daze. It's sent by the transportation company under the Central Chamber of Commerce. It's written that the recipient is you, young hero Lin, but I don't know why it was sent to me. Han Zhong was also a little puzzled. Although there was no news from Lin during this time in the South Continent, and it was not strange that the letter was not sent to him, it was very strange that it was sent to him inexplicably. If Lin didn't personally tell him, it meant that the Central Chamber of Commerce, which had suddenly risen, had investigated the personal relationship between Hong Zhong and Lin clearly. This feeling was really a little disturbing. Hong Zhong was still worried if there was any conspiracy behind this, but after Lin heard it, he was suddenly stunned and didn't respond for a long time, which made everyone look at each other and think that he ate something weird. Lin was stunned for a long time before he came to his senses. Seeing everyone looking at him with a worried face, he suppressed the excitement in his heart and shook his head with a smile. Oh, I'm fine, Elder Hong. I've been waiting for this letter for a long time. I'll go find you tomorrow morning. It was no wonder that he lost his composure. When he heard the word Central Chamber of Commerce, Lin already knew that this letter was probably the reply from the secular world that he had been looking forward to. After hearing the news, Lin couldn't help feeling a little absent-minded. Fortunately, he had told them about his experience in the South Continent, which finally satisfied their curiosity. Because Shanghai Laner had to go back before midnight, the banquet didn't last too long. Seeing that it was almost time, everyone dispersed. After seeing everyone off, Lin didn't rest. His mind was full of the letter that Hong Zhong mentioned, and he was too excited to stop. However, he still restrained himself and didn't follow Hong Zhong to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce overnight. Instead, he went to the secret base of the King of Rags alone with the food and wine that he had prepared in advance. After such a long time, this place hadn't changed at all. When Lin appeared with the food and wine, the King of Rags was engrossed in writing as if he was calculating something crazily. The ground beside him was covered with the manuscript paper that he had written. Lin just stood behind him, but he didn't notice it at all. To be continued. XH 118. Chapter 46:17. Lin smiled and didn't disturb the King of Rags. He just quietly looked at what the King of Rags was writing. There were all kinds of strange symbols and extremely complicated formulas, which Lin, a dabbler in forging, couldn't understand at all. He could only roughly see that the King of Rags was improving the plan, and it was related to the weapon that was being forged. Advertisement. At this moment, the situation in the casting pool was the same as before. It was still that unsightly lump of iron, still maintaining a lukewarm state. Occasionally, there would be 1 or 2 bubbles in the pool, but most of the time it was like a pool of stagnant water without any sign of forming. No, there must be something wrong here, but where is the problem? The King of Rags suddenly frowned and muttered with a worried look. Eat something first. Maybe it'll help if you clear your head a little. Lin Yi said as he placed the dishes on the table beside him. Well, that's fine. Garbage King nodded without even turning his head, grabbing the food and wine and wolfing it down without even looking at it. His eyes were still glued to the paper, and it took a good half an incense's worth of time for him to finish all the food and wine before he finally snapped back to reality. You're back. He turned around abruptly with a surprised look on his face. You're back. Haha, you finally see me. If it were someone else with bad intentions, you wouldn't know how many times you would have died. You have to be more vigilant in the future. Lin, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Hee, I couldn't help but be distracted. The King of Rags scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. I'm really sorry. I've been away for more than a year. I was forging for me, but it was you who suffered from the beginning. I'm really sorry. Lin Yi looked at the King of Rags' disheveled appearance and was suddenly filled with guilt. But the King of Rags didn't feel anything. Hearing Lin Yi's words, he was surprised. Has it been 2 years? I don't even know. Lin Yi suddenly felt even more guilty. The tattered king had been guarding this forging pool all year round and had never stepped out of it. That's why he even forgot about the time. Lin Yi couldn't help but be moved. It's because of me. I've made you suffer, Brother Wang. Huh, you're talking about this? Brother Lin, you're looking down on me too much. Patience is a compulsory lesson for blacksmiths. Guarding here isn't a form of torture, but a rare cultivation experience. Even if that didn't happen, I've already planned to do something that tests my patience. It hasn't even been 2 years. How is that possible? King of Junk said disapprovingly. Lin Yi looked at the King of Junk doubtfully. It sounded like it was true, but it could also be nonsense to comfort himself. Regardless of whether it was true or not, he was very touched. Come, for your patience and perseverance, let me propose a toast to you. Lin Yi didn't say anything else. All the words he wanted to say were in the wine. I've already said it's nothing. The King of Junk chuckled, but still clinked his glass with Lin Yi and gulped it down. By the way, Brother Wang, what are you writing? It looks very profound. Lin Yi couldn't help but ask curiously as he filled the King of Junk's glass. Oh, it's an improvement plan that I've come up with recently. It might be able to break the current stalemate and add a very practical new feature to the weapon after it's completed. But I haven't figured it out yet. Based on the current progress, it'll probably take some time. Anyway, it's not a bad thing to waste time. Don't you think so, Brother Lin? The King of Junk said with a smile. Yes, no matter what, it's better than being half dead now. I believe in Brother Wang's ability. Lin Yi nodded. In terms of forging, he couldn't even be considered a primary school student compared to the King of Junk. It was not difficult for him to get some materials, but to ask him to give advice to the King of Junk on such a technical problem, he'd better wash up and go to bed. Sigh. Actually, I've come up with a lot of interesting ideas recently. If I can realize them one by one, I can at least improve this weapon by a few levels. Unfortunately, these ideas require very high precision and fire control. I'm afraid I can't control it with my current level. What a pity. The King of Junk sighed. This was probably the highest level of weapon he could forge in his life. Of course, he wanted it to be perfect. Unfortunately, perhaps because the materials were too high grade, the precision of the fire during the forging of this weapon was so high that it made one's hair stand on end. There's still a long way to go. In fact, it's already very rare to be able to maintain the status quo for such a long time. If it really doesn't work, we can just treat it as practice. We can always get the materials again. Lin Yi comforted him. How can we do that? We won't be able to find things like the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land in our next lives. How can we treat it as practice? Brother Lin, don't worry. Even if I can't make it take shape for the time being, I'm confident that I can maintain the status quo. As for the method, we'll try it slowly in the future. I believe we'll succeed one day. The King of Junk's eyes were shining. Looking at the king of junk's confident look, Lin Yi was stunned. Then he smiled and nodded heavily. This guy was a genius in forging, and a simple-minded one at that. I've picked up a treasure this time. The two talked and drank at the same time. Not only did they not get drunk, but they became more and more spirited, especially the king of junk's spirit. Other people would come up with ideas when they were drunk, but the king of junk's ideas were like taking a piss when he was drunk. After a while, he would come up with a strange idea. Every time he heard it, the half-baked Lin Yi would be stunned. In the end, the king of junk was so excited that he simply left Lin Yi aside and continued to calculate on the stone platform. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just when he was feeling helpless, the king of junk finally came to his senses and said to him, "Brother Lin, you'd better go back. I'm enough here. I can cultivate my patience in seclusion. This is a good opportunity." Lin Yi looked at him and calculated the time. It was almost dawn. Finally, he nodded and stood up. "Okay, then I'll leave it to you, Brother Wang. I'll come to see you in a few days." After coming out of the king of junk's secret base, Lin Yi didn't return to the blue cloud pavilion. Instead, he went straight to the market. He couldn't wait to read the letter that Hong Zhong mentioned. Seeing Lin Yi come early in the morning, Hong Zhong was stunned for a moment. Then, under Lin Yi's urging, he took out the letter and handed it to Lin Yi. Campus Bells Online Drama. July 13th, Aichi is online. For more news, follow QQ on mobile. Status, Interest Tribe, Campus Bells Personal Master. This is the place for Campus Bells readers to communicate and release news. Murloc 22, to be continued. Chapter 46:18. When he received the letter from Hong Zhong, although it was only a few thin sheets of paper, Lin Yi suddenly felt his hands become heavy. He took a few deep breaths before he finally calmed his mind and opened the letter to read. With just one glance, Lin Yi's emotions, which had calmed down, suddenly went out of control again. Tears almost flowed out of his eyes uncontrollably. Although he had only been on Heaven Stage Island for less than 3 years, which was equivalent to studying abroad in the secular world, Lin Yi was different. Strictly speaking, Heaven Stage Island and the secular world were on 2 different levels. Even if they were on different sides of the world, there would always be a day when they would meet again. However, if they were separated, it would be hard to say. It might even be an eternal farewell. If it wasn't for the emergence of the Central Chamber of Commerce and the words spoken by that ghostly thing in the 5 Poison Swamp, which gave Lin Yi hope of going back and forth to the secular world, Lin Yi's heart was a little more at ease. Otherwise, he might have asked around like he did when he first arrived. Taking another deep breath, Lin Yi controlled his hands that were involuntarily trembling due to excitement and carefully read the letter. There were a total of 10 sheets of paper. There were 5 sheets of paper, and each letter was divided into 2. One letter was for his confidants, and the other letter was for his lackeys. When he saw the first sentence at the beginning of the letter, Lin Yi was immediately delighted. It turned out that this group of people had originally planned to write a letter for each of them, but in the end there were actually 100,000 words. When they were stacked together, it would be a thick dozen. 3 to 5 envelopes simply wouldn't be able to fit all of them, let alone all of them in one envelope. When the Central Express deliveries courier came to collect the letter, he was dumbfounded. After a lot of persuasion, this group of people finally reluctantly changed their minds. After some discussion, it finally became like this. Each of them wrote a few words to Lin Yi and then compiled them into 2 letters and sent them together. But even so, because of the excessive weight of the letter, this letter was tossed back and forth several times. It couldn't be helped that it could only be simplified again and again, barely meeting the requirements of the Central Express delivery. As for the 2 letters in Lin Yi's hands, this was the 7th edition that everyone had put in a lot of effort to revise. Writing a letter, which was supposed to be a simple task, had become more complicated than writing a thesis, The 2 letters were filled with countless handwriting. In any case, everyone had to write a few sentences. Even if it was only 1 or 2 sentences, they had to write it themselves. They absolutely refused to let others write it for them. The letter also said that everyone had specially held a meeting for 2 days to discuss the format and grammar of the letter. This made Lin not know whether to laugh or cry. These guys really have too much energy and nowhere to use it. Lin silently shook his head. But after thinking about it carefully, he realized that the top experts of the secular world had basically all come to Heaven Island. The strength of the remaining people could be said to be unparalleled in the world. Aside from Hiluan Duan, who came to cause trouble, no one else dared to provoke them. It was normal for them to have excess energy. In the letter, everyone described the conflict before, including the matter of Lin Dongfeng coming out to save the situation in detail. Other than that, there were some other trivial matters. However, even so, Lin still read it over and over again. Every time he read it, the corner of his mouth would involuntarily curve up. He laughed foolishly for a long time. Although Hong Zhong deliberately left the room for Lin to avoid arousing suspicion, he could still hear laughter from time to time in the next room. Once or twice was fine. The point was that he'd been like this for an entire hour, and even someone as knowledgeable as Hong Zhong was scared out of his wits. He couldn't help but furrow his brows, wondering if the letter had been poisoned or something. Otherwise, Lin was a super genius who was calm and collected. Why would he keep laughing foolishly for no reason? There must be a problem. Lin laughed foolishly for half an hour. Hong Zhong was restless in the next room for half an hour. Finally, he couldn't help but knock on the door. Young Hero Lin. Young Hero Lin. Old Hong, what's the matter? Lin finally opened the door after a while. Oh, I'm fine. I just wanted to ask if you're okay. Hong Zhong looked up and down at Lin with a strange expression. He found that it wasn't as strange as he thought it was. Lin looked relaxed, as if a burden that had been weighing on his heart for many years had been removed. He felt that his whole person was a lot more radiant. Hong Zhong wasn't wrong. This letter really helped Lin remove a big worry from his heart. The most important thing for him was that everyone in the secular world was safe and sound. Moreover, there was also Lin to save the day. In addition, everyone was a rare master in the secular world. It could be said that they could sleep peacefully. Even Hiluonan was given the cold shoulder, so there was nothing for Lin to worry about. I'm fine. Lin awkwardly scratched his head, and then suddenly asked, Old Hong, how much do you know about the Central Chamber of Commerce? Do you know about the Secular World Letter Delivery Service? The Secular World Letter Delivery Service? Hong Zhong was stunned when he heard this. He thoughtfully said, I have heard of this, but I didn't know much about it. Is this letter sent from the secular world? Yes, I bid for this at the Middle Island auction. It can be used to write a letter to friends and family in the secular world. The letter in my hand now is the acknowledgement letter from the secular world. Lin nodded. Well, although I wasn't there at the auction, it was still quite sensational. It is said that writing a letter requires a sky-high price, and the price is very high. Hong Zhong said. At that time, the fixed price was 100,000 spiritual jades. Lin smiled. Oh, that's really a sky-high price. Young hero Lin, you are really generous. Hong Zhong couldn't help but sigh. 100,000 spiritual jades was enough to buy a large number of heaven and earth treasures. Many powerful cultivators were willing to risk their lives for 100,000 spiritual jades. In the end, Lin just used it to write a letter. This kind of courage was really not something that ordinary people could have. For people like me, this letter is much more precious than any heaven and earth treasures. Not to mention 100,000 spiritual jades. Even if it was 200,000 or 300,000, I would definitely find a way to buy it. Lin Yi paused and then asked, "The Central Chamber of Commerce's letter delivery service to the secular world has not been heard of since the Middle Island auction. Old Hong, you have a wide network. Can you help me ask if this business is still continuing and if I can still reply to the secular world?" "Okay, wait here for a moment. I will go ask someone." Hong Zhong agreed without hesitation and immediately turned to go out. The place he went to this time was not far from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. It was the Central Chamber of Commerce in the inner street of the market. Chapter 46:19. The manager of the North Island branch of the Central Chamber of Commerce was still Si Haixiao, although he had some conflicts with the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and the Hong Chamber of Commerce had put him on the blacklist. The Central Chamber of Commerce was rising too fast. Its power was no longer what it used to be. It was the third largest chamber of commerce, second only to the Five Elements Commerce and the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If it continued to develop at this speed, it was possible for it to replace the top two. Since the Central Chamber of Commerce was so powerful, as the manager of the North Island branch, Si Haixiao's status naturally rose. Now, many senior executives of the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the Middle Island headquarters were proposing large-scale cooperation with the Central Chamber of Commerce. For this, they did not hesitate to whitewash Si Haixiao's reputation. This was the trend, and even Hong Zhong could not stop it. Since the two sides had business cooperation, Hong Zhong naturally would not deliberately make things difficult for Si Haixiao. After all, he was a businessman who could make money with peace. Unless it was an irreconcilable feud, he could let go of all other grievances. Strictly speaking, there was no direct conflict between him and Si Haixiao. Si Haixiao was just stupid enough to flirt with Shangguan Laner and Ning Xuefei. Everything was his own doing, and it had nothing to do with Hong Zhong. "Hey, isn't this Manager Hong? What can I do for you?" Seeing Hong Zhong enter the door, Si Haixiao lazily sat on the armchair in the corridor on the second floor and greeted him condescendingly. On each side of him was a woman in thin clothes. Although they were not peerless beauties, their looks could be considered top-notch. He was in high spirits these days. Although he was only the manager of the North Island branch of the Central Chamber of Commerce, and Hong Zhong was the vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, a level higher than him, he looked down on Hong Zhong. The Central Chamber of Commerce was just a tool for the expansion of the Central Chamber of Commerce. In front of the Central Chamber of Commerce, even if the Hong Chamber of Commerce was the second largest chamber of commerce on the Heaven Stage Island, it was nothing. Of course, even if he didn't like Hong Zhong was still an important figure. Si Haixiao wouldn't neglect him too much. After all, the business of the North Island branch had a lot of cooperation with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If the relationship between them became strained, it wouldn't be a good thing for him. "Manager Si, I haven't seen you for a few days. How are you?" Hong Zhong cupped his hands and smiled, not minding Si Haixiao's slight. If Si Haixiao looked down on him, he would look down on Si Haixiao as well. In his eyes, Si Haixiao was just a despicable person. If he hadn't been lucky enough to board the ship of the Central Chamber of Commerce, this guy would have long died in some mass grave. However, Hong Zhong's shrewdness and self-restraint were not something that a mere Si Haixiao could compare to. Even though he looked down on him, he could still make the other party feel like he was bathing in the spring breeze. This was the ability that a businessman should have. "It's all right. I eat and drink as I should. Most importantly, I have beauties to accompany me. This is how I live my life. Do you want me to give you one?" Si Haixiao said with a laugh. In the past 2 years, he had spent a lot of effort to find beautiful women from all over the place and formed a harem group. He hung out with the harem group all day long. Leading a befuddled life was his goal in life. The higher-ups didn't seem dissatisfied with his actions at all. As long as he could complete the task on time, even if he had a harem of 3,000 beauties, no one would care about him. I appreciate shopkeeper C's good intentions. However, A gentleman doesn't take what others like. I can't afford to enjoy such beauties. Hong Zhong smiled slightly and walked up to see Hai Xiao. He asked directly, "One doesn't come to the temple for no reason. I'm actually here to ask a favor. There's something that I want to understand from you, shopkeeper C. I wonder if it's convenient?" "No problem. Ask away." Si Hai Xiao was still carelessly hugging the two beauties. He didn't have the slightest intention of letting them avoid suspicion. Hong Zhong's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. If this was an important business discussion, he would definitely turn around and leave without saying a word. Talking business with this guy was simply looking for trouble. "I want to ask if the business of sending letters to the secular world that your Chamber of Commerce once launched at the Zhongdao auction is still going on?" Hong Zhong asked calmly. "You want to send letters to the secular world?" Si Hai Xiao was stunned when he heard this. He didn't think much about it and answered directly, "No, this business has never been launched at all. It's just that, in order to make a name for ourselves, we used the opportunity of the Zhongdao auction to create a gimmick. After that, it was cancelled." "Cancelled? But as far as I know, this business was marked with a sky-high price of 100,000 spirit jades." Hong Zhong couldn't help but feel a little strange. 100,000 spirit jades is indeed a sky-high price, but think about it. This is not an ordinary letter delivery business. It needs to travel between the Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. How can the energy and cost of this be imagined by ordinary people? I can tell you bluntly, don't think that 100,000 spirit jades is a sky-high price. It's a losing business. Back then, it was just a loss to make a name for itself. Only a fool would continue doing it. Si Hai Xiao curled his lips in a nonchalant manner. "Then will this business be reopened in the future?" Hong Zhong still didn't give up and asked. "Who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. This matter is not under my jurisdiction, so I'm not too sure. But I guess it won't happen in a short period of time." Si Hai Xiao was busy with the women beside him while taking the time to answer. "So that's how it is. Thank you for enlightening me, shopkeeper C. This old man still has something to do, so I won't disturb you any longer. I'll take my leave first," Hong Zhong immediately said after inquiring about the situation. Since the other party had already said this, it meant that this matter was really impossible. It would be a waste of time to continue asking, and it might even make people suspicious. "Take care, I won't send you off." Si Hai Xiao raised his eyelids and looked at Hong Zhong's back as he left. Suddenly he frowned slightly. Why did this old man ask about this? Could it be that he has friends in the secular world? With beauties in his arms, Si Hai Xiao was too lazy to continue thinking about it. Instead of spending time thinking about an old man, it was better to leave time for his two little beauties. This was the right thing to do. After returning to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hong Zhong told Lin Yi about Si Hai Xiao's answer. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. Since the Central Chamber of Commerce didn't intend to continue, no matter how many spirit jades he had, it was useless. Chapter 46:20. Yes, it makes sense. What do you mean, Elder Hong? Lin Yi asked quickly. I think its problem may be in two aspects. Either this technology is not mature enough, or this business is too sensitive and hurts the core interests of some people, so it can only be stopped halfway. Other than this, I can't think of any other reason to stop this exclusive monopoly business. Hong Zhong speculated. Monopoly. This was something that almost all businessmen dreamed of. For this, there were many who would not hesitate to go on a killing spree. Which Chamber of Commerce would give up their monopolized business? Lin Yi nodded thoughtfully. This Central Chamber of Commerce that suddenly rose was too mysterious, especially the huge shadow behind it. Just thinking about it made people shudder. Capturing a large number of gold core stage masters for human experiments. How terrible this kind of organization was. The two were silent for a moment and did not continue this topic. Lin Yi turned to ask, "By the way, Elder Hong, have you been to Zhongdao recently?" "Yes, I went there just last month. I especially went to Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanqi and asked them to take me to Tiandan Pavilion. The business is really good." Hong Zhong looked at Lin Yi with a playful look. With his relationship with Lin Yi would certainly not hide the matter of Tiandan Pavilion from him. After all, he was a real ally who could be included in the category of his own people. Moreover, he had asked Hong Zhong to help send elixirs to Tiandan Pavilion. "How are they?" Lin Yi asked quickly. "Them? You mean Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanqi? Of course, they are still the same. Their tempers are not warm and hot, and they can't change for a lifetime." Hong Zhong deliberately laughed. Elder Hong, don't keep me guessing. You know I'm not talking about them, but them." Lin Yi was a little embarrassed and rubbed his hands. The saying, "Even heroes have a weakness for beauties," is true. To think that Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanqi specifically asked me to bring you a message, but you didn't care at all. You only care about your two confidants. If they find out about this, their expressions will definitely be very interesting," Hong Zhong said with a rare, mischievous smile. "Bring me a message? What news?" Lin Yi was stunned. "They told me to tell you. These 2 years, Master Zhang Liju hasn't been back at all. If he does, he'll send you a message immediately," Hong Zhong said. "Oh, I know. It's rare for them to keep thinking about this. I have to thank them properly next time I go to Middle Island." Lin Yi nodded, not too disappointed. It was expected that Zhang Liju would disappear without a trace, but as long as he waited patiently, there would come a day when they would meet again. "As for those two confidants of yours, I don't need to say much. You should read the letter yourself." Hong Zhong laughed and took out a letter from his sleeves. Evidently, it was Tian Chan and Sydney who asked him to bring it. "Letter." Lin Yi quickly took it and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Then why didn't you give it to me together?" "I wanted to give it to you together, but who knew that you couldn't wait to read the letter before you snatched it? I didn't want to disturb you. Plus, that letter seemed more important and suspicious. If I gave it to you together, I was afraid you'd get confused." Hong Zhong shrugged. "All right." Lin Yi opened the letter in front of him. It wasn't as full as the previous one. There were only 2 thin pages, and judging from the handwriting, it should be Tian Chan's. "Everything is fine." This was the first sentence at the beginning of the letter. This was something Lin Yi had expected. After all, with the powerful Vice Master of Middle Island, the Will of Heaven, looking after them, as well as Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanqi, whoever dared to mess with them wouldn't be able to live past the second day. Other things aside, at the very least, the name of Sky Executioner was still very popular in Nakajima. He was someone who could become a legend, just like Zhang Liju, and his strength couldn't be measured with common sense. He could easily kill a profound Ascension practitioner when he was at nascent soul. Who would dare mess with such a monster? Other than that, Tian Chan also talked about the current situation of Tiandan Pavilion in the letter. Originally, before Lin Yi went to Southern Continent, because Lin Yi would send elixirs regularly, there was no shortage of all kinds of elixirs. The business had always been booming, but since Lin Yi went to Southern Continent, this supply was suddenly cut off. The entire Tiandan Pavilion could only rely on Tian Chan to support the elixirs alone, and business suddenly declined. This couldn't be helped. Although Tian Chan could also concoct elixirs, and the quality was not bad, no matter the quality or quantity, it couldn't be compared to Lin Yi, who had the pesticide cauldron. She could support Tiandan Pavilion alone, and this itself could be called a miracle. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel guilty when he saw this. He should have stocked up more elixirs before going to Southern Continent. In fact, he had already done so, but he only provided half a year's worth of elixirs. At that time, he never thought that he would be trapped in Southern Continent for so long. Not only was Lin Yi unlucky, but Tian Chan and the others also suffered. However, What made Lin Yi quite surprised was that although the business of Tiandan Pavilion had declined in the past year, it did not decline as much as he imagined. The daily turnover was still able to maintain about 60,000 spirit jades. This result was unexpected. Even if it was a lot less than the peak, it was still very exaggerated. After reading the whole letter, Lin Yi suddenly realized that there were actually two very key reasons why the daily turnover of Tiandan Pavilion could be maintained at 60,000 spirit jades. One was that Tianchan and Sydney had good management skills. The two of them worked together. After Lin Yi's supply was cut off, Tianchan's efforts ensured the source of elixirs for Tiandan Pavilion, while Sydney formulated a corresponding price increase strategy according to the situation that the best elixirs were getting less and less. The rarer a thing is, the greater its value. It was normal to raise the price of a supreme grade pill, no matter where it was. It was abnormal for Heavenly Dan Pavilion to sell it as a common product. Moreover, Xue Li's strategy was not only to raise the price, but also to limit the number of pills sold every day according to the last inventory. Only selling 3 best elixirs a day was a new gimmick that could attract people, and this had retained the popularity of Tiandan Pavilion to a large extent. However, just based on this point alone, he could at most guarantee that the Heavenly Dan Pavilion would not be destroyed. It was not realistic to maintain a daily income of 60,000. Hence, there was a second reason, and that was Wei Shenjin's care. Since Wei Shenjin joined Lin Yi, he would go to Tiandan Pavilion every 2 or 3 days. However, this was the result that the higher-ups of Snow Sword faction wanted. Campus Bell web drama. Online release date changed to July 20th. Please pay attention to 22's news. To be continued. Chapter 46:21. They wanted to take this opportunity to express their goodwill to the will of heaven. So Wei Shenjin was not suspected. Instead, he was more important. Now, he was the inner core deacon of Snow Sword sect. Although the position wasn't high, it was a very important springboard. Just like Kong Xiaoming in the North Island, after being the deacon of the Welcoming Pavilion for a while, he was now the deacon of the outer gate of the Soaring Pavilion. He had a lot of power. Although it was a position that Su Lingchong gave him, he still had a bright future. Wei Shenjin was the same. The position of inner core deacon was not very high, but he had the right to purchase in the inner core. Even if it was only a small part, it was definitely not a small business. There was no doubt that Wei Shenjin's elixirs were sold to Tiandan Pavilion. Anyway, Tiandan Pavilion had a small reputation now. They were fair in both quality and price. Even if others knew about it, they could not say anything. Because of this, Tiandan Pavilion's business could maintain at 60,000 a day. This was not the credit of one person, but the credit of Tianchan, Sydney, Wei Shenjin, and everyone else, including the will of heaven. Lin Yi had planned to go to Middle Island as soon as possible, but now that he knew everything was fine, he was not worried anymore. The top priority was not to go to Middle Island, but to replenish the elixirs for Tianchan and the others. He immediately turned to Hong Zhong and said, "Mr. Hong, I'm going to focus on refining a batch of elixirs these days. Please bring them to me through the channel of Hong's Chamber of Commerce." "No problem. Just say the word," Hong Zhong said straightforwardly. Although it was a little suspicious of him using public resources for his own personal use, as the vice president with real power, he had this power. Moreover, Lin Yi was the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. He was just borrowing the supply channel. No one could say anything. After chatting with Hong Zhong for a while, Lin Yi did not stay in Hong's Chamber of Commerce for long. After all, he had just returned to the North Island. In addition to meeting with his own people, he had to visit many other people in person. For example, Shanghai Tianhua. Strictly speaking, Lin Yi didn't have much interaction with Shangguan Tianhua, the sect master of the Soaring Pavilion, aside from that meaningful roll call during the inter-sect competition. The only other reason was because of his relationship with Shang Guanlan. As a result, Lin Yi's relationship with Shangguan Tianhua was naturally closer than that of the other higher-ups. Of course, even if these were not mentioned, Lin Yi himself also admired Shanghai Tianhua very much. The strength of this top big shot in the North Island was not the only thing that made people look up to him. The key was his bearing, and his every move gave people a sense of majesty. No matter what kind of standpoint one stood in, one would unconsciously submit to such a character. The arrogant hall master of the law enforcement hall, Ramjia, was always arrogant and disdainful no matter who he faced. However, he only looked at Shanghai Tianhua in a different light. This was probably the reason why. Most people were born ordinary, but there were very few people who were born to shine brightly. Lin Yi believed that Shanghai Tianhua must be the latter. Don't be fooled by the fact that this big boss was cultivating his character now. But when he was young, he must have been a legendary figure who was constantly being talked about. Early this morning, Shangguan Laner is practicing calligraphy with Shangguan Tianhua. Practicing calligraphy can calm the mind and also nourish the mind. This is the homework that Shangguan Tianhua arranged for her. Even if he didn't cultivate, he had to practice calligraphy for 2 hours every morning. This was something that couldn't be changed. Shangguan Laner did not resist this, although it was also boring. However, practicing calligraphy was still better than meditating and cultivating. Moreover, she seemed to be quite talented in this aspect. Even Shanghai Tianhua, who usually did not praise others, could not help but admire her. There were also words of praise for this. Little Lun, stop for a while. Shanghai Tianhua suddenly said, Grandpa, what's wrong? Shangguan Laner asked curiously, did the sun rise from the west today, and he could stop practicing calligraphy? You go and make tea. There will be guests coming to visit later. Shanghai Tianhua smiled slightly. In addition to his outstanding talent in calligraphy, his granddaughter's talent in tea ceremony was also the best he had ever seen in his life. It could be said that she was good in everything, except that she didn't like to cultivate, which made people feel helpless. Oh, Wu Qing or Xing Nu? Shangguan Laner asked. With the status of Shanghai Tianhua, the spiritual tea that he took out was naturally the best spiritual tea that was rarely seen in the market. However, if one really paid attention to it, there was still a difference between the two. Wu Qing was slightly lower grade and was generally used to entertain the elders of the 3 great pavilions. As for Xing Nu, it had to be at least at the level of the pavilion master of the 3 great pavilions. Shangguan Tianhua continued to write as he said, Take a bit of a tip. Ah, who is it this time? Shanghai Laner was suddenly shocked. It was Grandpa's most precious spiritual tea. It took a lot of effort to collect a few tales. Usually, even he was reluctant to drink it. Only when relatives and friends occasionally came and chatted happily, he would be very stingy to take out a little. Even if it was a little more, he would be distressed. Today, he was even willing to take out the tea. What the hell was going on? Little Lon, you know this person. Shanghai Tianhua deliberately kept her in suspense. I know him. Shanghai Laner tilted her head and thought for a while. She guessed, is it Grandpa Hong? No, Grandpa. You have always given him Xing Nu's tea. Is it a big shot from the outer island? In Shangguan Laner's eyes, only Hong Zhong, her old friend of many years, was qualified to let her grandfather show his heart to her in the whole North Island. Even the pavilion masters of the other 2 pavilions didn't have this blessing. After thinking about it, she could only think of the big shots in the outer island. Shangguan Tianhua chuckled but didn't explain. Shangguan Lan, I had no choice but to go brew some tea, puzzled. Nearly an hour later, someone outside suddenly activated the formation. When Shangguan Lan opened the door, her mind filled with confusion. She was instantly startled. Little junior brother, how could it be you? Shanghai Laner opened her eyes inconceivably and said with surprise, "Ah." Lin Yi was shocked by her strange reaction and said in confusion, "What's wrong? Is it strange that I come to visit Pavilion Master Shangguan?" "No, it's not strange at all. But Grandpa is very strange." Shanghai Laner's expression became more and more strange. "What do you mean?" Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. "Well, I don't know." Shanghai Laner blinked. She suddenly thought that Grandpa might not have prepared the tea for Lin Yi. But since Lin Yi happened to be here, she must not let the goodies go to others. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound. First, she gave the tea to Lin Yi to drink. As for the big shots from the outer island, she would think about it later. Shanghai Laner quickly pulled Lin Yi, who was confused, to the study and said to Shanghai Tianhua, "Grandpa, little junior brother, is here to see you. I will go to serve you tea." Chapter 46:22. As he spoke, he winked at Lin Yi, and Shanghai Laner then left mysteriously, leaving Lin Yi, who was puzzled, and the little curly bear, who was hanging on him with ease, looked at each other. Disciple Lin Yi pays respect to Pavilion Master Shangguan. Lin Yi respectfully performed a disciple salute to Shanghai Tianhua, although he was a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion, and the other party was the Pavilion Master of Soaring Pavilion. The 3 pavilions of the North Island were one. Anyone who saw Shanghai Tianhua had to perform a disciple salute. "You've made a lot of progress after a trip to South Continent. Not bad." Shanghai Tianhua glanced at him, nodded slightly, and then said, "Come and look at my calligraphy. What do you think?" "Yes." Lin Yi was a little surprised by Shanghai Tianhua's familiar attitude and even somewhat flattered. However, he had seen a lot of things in South Continent this time, so he would not lose his composure. No matter how powerful Shanghai Tianhua was in the North Island, he was not stronger than the 5 poisons, flood dragon, and the giant electric eel, who were above the sea splitting period. What's more, he was not hostile to him. Instead, he appreciated him a little. Lin Yi was so reserved because he respected him, not because he was afraid. Walking to the desk, Lin Yi was immediately attracted at first glance. What Shanghai Tianhua was writing at this time was the previous ancient tablet inscription. The content was extremely mysterious and profound. In addition, every word and every stroke on it contained the artistic conception of Shanghai Tianhua. A sense of ancient desolation came to his face, making him lose his mind unconsciously. Ordinary people might not understand it, but for people like Lin Yi, who had reached a certain realm and had an extremely strong comprehension ability, this piece of calligraphy was an extremely exquisite inheritance. If he could study and comprehend it for a long time, he might be able to comprehend some extremely exquisite martial techniques from it. I've long heard that Pavilion Master Shangguan's calligraphy is unparalleled in the world. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, it's truly an eye-opener, Lin Yi said sincerely. Hee, it's rare for you to compliment someone. Shanghai Tianhua smiled. No, I mean it. Lin Yi shook his head. Although he respected Shangguan Tianhua, with his personality, he wouldn't go around flattering others. Even the closest and most respected elders did not receive such treatment. This was due to their nature. All right, since you're speaking the truth, as an elder, I have to show my gratitude. How about this? You can pick any piece of calligraphy in this study and take it away. Shanghai Tianhua said with a smile. Lin Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. The calligraphy was like the person. To some extent, being able to comprehend Shanghai Tianhua's calligraphy meant that he had the opportunity to steal from him. Of course, the premise was that his talent was high enough to be able to comprehend the essence of the concept. Although Lin Yi now had the 5 elements murderous aura in his hand, it was not a burden to have more skills. Moreover, his 5 elements murderous aura came from the 5 poison dragon. It could be used to kill enemies, but it was impossible to use it to improve his state of mind. A human trying to learn the state of mind of a beast was simply courting death. On the contrary, if he could learn something from Shanghai Tianhua, he would definitely benefit greatly in this aspect. The state of mind and strength were equally important, especially at the nascent soul stage, and above, the cultivation method gradually changed from the outside to the inside. The improvement of the state of mind was particularly important, and Shanghai Tianhua was obviously a powerhouse in this aspect. I don't dare to refuse an elder's gift. This disciple will accept it respectfully. Since the other party had taken the initiative to propose, Lin Yi would not pretend to be polite to the other party. He immediately pointed to the ancient inscription on the desk that was only half copied and said, "Then I will take this one." "You have good taste." Shanghai Tianhua could not help but laugh, shook his head and said, "This one is not good. It is to be given to someone else, and it is not finished yet. Forget it before you leave. Ask little Lan Er to pick one for you. She is also an expert in this aspect." "Yes, thank you, Pavilion Master Shangguan." Lin Yi nodded and thought that it was really right to come this time. Shanghai Tianhua's calligraphy could not be bought outside, no matter how many spiritual jades there were. The fact that he offered to give one to him showed that he really did not treat him as an outsider. Lin Yi was right. Because of his relationship with Shanghai Laner, and because of his unprecedented super talent, Shanghai Tianhua did love talents. He once wanted to accept him as a personal disciple, but after thinking about it, he did not do so in the end. Instead, he followed Ram Jie's model and let him be. This was the most suitable training method for people like Lin Yi. There was no master and disciple in name, but in the eyes of Shanghai Tianhua, Lin Yi's status was not much lower than that of a personal disciple. This time he took the initiative to give the calligraphy to Lin Yi was actually a disguised guidance. As for how much Lin Yi could benefit from his calligraphy, it was Lin Yi's own business. While the two were talking, Shanghai Laner had already prepared the spiritual tea. Shanghai Tianhua immediately brought Lin Yi to his specially designed tea room. The two sat opposite each other, while Shanghai Laner and Little Curly Bear each took a seat next to them. And good tea. Lin Yi only sniffed it. Before he had time to take a sip, all the pores on his whole body suddenly opened up. He felt as if he had been baptized by nature. It was not that Lin Yi had never drunk good tea. In fact, since he was no longer short of spiritual jades, he had always kept all kinds of superior spiritual tea in the space of the jade pendant. It was mainly used to entertain friends. Most of them were expensive, and some even cost tens of thousands of spiritual jades. However, compared with the spiritual tea in his cup at this moment, his so-called superior spiritual tea was simply a straw. In the secular world, there was a saying that a sip of the bejeweled nectar could prolong one's life. Lin Yi had never heard of it. After all, this was a myth made up by people. But now he had to believe that there was really such a good thing in the world that could steal the fortune of heaven and earth. This is called dew tip. It is Grandpa's darling. You can't drink it anywhere else. Shanghai Laner looked at Lin Yi's intoxicated look and laughed. Shangguan Tianhua didn't say anything, just smiled. To Lin Yi, being able to drink tea was an extremely rare pleasure, and it was the same for him as well. Every time he drank tea, his mind would become extremely clear. Although it wasn't as clear as when he was in a state of sudden enlightenment, it was still a good thing. Lin Yi gently took a sip and closed his eyes for a long time. Then he slowly said, "The essence of this tea is really rare. Even if you taste it for a year and a half, you may not be able to fully understand it. It really is a rare good tea." "Oh, you also dabbled in the tea ceremony?" Shanghai Tianhua's eyes lit up when he heard this. "It can't be said that I dabbled in it. I don't know how to boil tea, nor do I know how to taste tea. At most, I just gobble it up and waste it." Lin Yi laughed at himself. He had actually learned the tea ceremony before, but that was the tea of the secular world. It was completely different from the spiritual tea of the heavenly stage island. To be continued. Chapter 46:23. Hee, it's not a waste to say that. You didn't drink this cup of tea in vain. Shangguan Tianhua smiled faintly, then said, When I was young, I stumbled upon this tea in the depths of an ancient forest. After that, I traveled through all the famous mountains and great rivers of the heavenly Tyr Island, but I didn't find any more. Only in that place would a little grow every few decades. Ever since I was young, I've tasted it, but I still haven't been able to fully appreciate its flavor. It's hard to find another tea like this in the world. I see. In that case, I really came here today. Lin Yi said and took a small sip. It was really memorable. 3 people and 1 bear sat around the table and quietly tasted the tea. At this time, even the usually active little curly bear was very quiet. Although it didn't know the tea ceremony, it could distinguish the good from the bad. The dew-tip spirit tea that Shanghai Laner specially poured for it was enough for it to digest for a while. After a full hour, when the flavor of the dew-tip spirit tea gradually faded, Shanghai Tianhua finally said again, Tell me about what happened in South Island. Yes. Lin Yi nodded and responded. In addition to etiquette, the main purpose of his visit to Shanghai Tianhua this time was to report what he had seen and heard in South Continent. Of course, this did not refer to the trivial experience he had told others before, but the 2 far-reaching events that might even affect the future situation of Heaven Stage Island. It was true that Lin Yi was a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In theory, no matter what happened, he should report to the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Unfortunately, he really didn't have a good impression of the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In particular, the number 1 residence was forcibly occupied, which had made most of the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion stand on the opposite side of him. In this case, if he still rushed to report to them, wasn't it shameful? On the other hand, Shanghai Tianhua, the master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, was like a half-teacher to Lin Yi. At least, that was what the public thought. Moreover, Shanghai Tianhua treated him well. Moreover, in Lin Yi's opinion, this was also the top big shot who could best represent the North Island. The first thing is that there is a huge organization behind the Central Chamber of Commerce called the Center. They specialize in capturing gold core experts in the South Continent to conduct human experiments. Senior brother Liu Bianren and I were both captured by them, but I found an opportunity to escape. Lin Yi organized his words and said, Yes, I already know about this. Liu Bianren has reported it before. Shanghai Tianhua nodded and muttered, whether it's the way the Central Chamber of Commerce rose to prominence or the ability to connect with the secular world. It's all because of this Central Chamber of Commerce. Both are very suspicious, but we still don't know its intentions. There are no signs of direct conflict, so we can only investigate in secret. Someone is already doing this, and I believe it's not just us. Other sects and forces are probably doing the same thing. Someone is doing it. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. If there was no accident, this task must have fallen on Ram Jia of the Law Enforcement Hall. Looking at the 3 pavilions of the North Island, except for the big shots at the pavilion master level, only the first person of the new generation could have the strength and means to explore the details of the center. The second thing, the spirit beasts of the South Island are ready to expand, or should be expanding already. They decided to include the surrounding sea area of the South Continent into their territory. All human cultivators have to pay taxes to them to ensure their safety, Lin Yi continued. Is there such a thing? Shanghai Tianhua's expression suddenly changed. What? Haven't you received this kind of tip-off before? Lin Yi couldn't help feeling a little strange. It had been at least half a year since he mistakenly broke into the Spirit Beast Conference. It was reasonable to say that they should have taken action long ago. Could it be that something happened inside the spirit beasts? No, there's no such news. However, although our 3 pavilions have also set up intelligence points in the South Continent Sea area, The distance is long after all, and the intelligence efficiency has always been low. If something really happens, it's not impossible for the intelligence points to be paralyzed for a while. Shanghai Tianhua frowned slightly and then asked in confusion, "This is the internal secret of the spirit beasts, right? How do you know this news?" I accidentally entered the hinterland of the South Island because I was chased by the old sect of Shishan. I happened to encounter them holding a spirit beast conference. So I accidentally heard this news. At that time, the crowd was excited and all the spirit beasts were stirred up. If I'm not mistaken, they will definitely carry out this matter. It's just a matter of time. Lin Yi said firmly, "Well, since the disappearance of the Spirit Beast King, the Spirit Beasts have indeed been a little restless. Vermilion Bird should be the one in charge now, right?" Shanghai Tianhua asked. "That's right," Lin Yi nodded, but he did not go into further detail about the current situation of the Spirit Beasts. Firstly, it was not necessary at the moment, and secondly, it was the Spirit Beasts matter after all. He still had to consider the feelings of the ghost. Okay, although this matter can't be said to have any impact on the North Island for the time being, if the spirit beasts really do this, they won't be satisfied with this. When the time comes, they will definitely take further action. Just in case, we have to treat this matter carefully. On behalf of the 3 pavilions in the North Island, I will first record your merit. Shanghai Tianhua pondered. You're too serious. No matter what, I'm still a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It's my duty to report these matters, so there's no merit to be said. Lin Yi shook his head. It's good that you have this awareness, but what should be yours will be yours. Shanghai Tianhua smiled indifferently and suddenly asked with interest, I heard from Little On, that you've already participated in the selection of the East Continent's Morning Star Academy in the South Continent, but you don't want to go. This time, seeing that Lin Yi's strength had been reborn, Shanghai Tianhua originally intended to recommend him to go to the East Continent. After all, after Ramjia, this was the disciple of the 3 pavilions that he was most optimistic about. In the end, he heard about this matter from Shanghai Laner. Lin Yi was slightly stunned, glanced at Shanghai Laner and nodded. Well, I don't have this thought for the time being, but when the time comes, I will definitely go to the East Continent. Otherwise, I'll be a frog in a well. That's good. I thought you were the same as Ramjia, looking down on the East Continent like weeds. Shanghai Tianhua paused and said earnestly, although the academies in the East Continent are full of geniuses, the atmosphere in the academies is generally too impetuous. For people like you and Ramjia, it's not strange that you look down on those so-called geniuses. However, the East Continent is, after all, the pinnacle of the entire 5 major islands in the heaven stage. There are many experts, hidden dragons, and crouching tigers. Young people should still have a chance to try their luck. Chapter 46-24. After reporting these 2 matters, Lin Yi had nothing else to say. They were either too trivial or related to his core secrets. Even though he had a good impression of Shangguan Tianhua, and even though he had a relationship with Shangguan Laner, their relationship was not close enough for him to confide in him. Novel seeing that Lin Yi did not continue to speak, Shangguan Tianhua did not ask more and immediately changed the topic. What do you think of the 3 pavilions of the North Island now? Lin Yi thought for a while and answered with 4 words. Talented people are coming out in large numbers. Haha, you're not wrong. Since you joined the Welcoming Pavilion, there have been many outstanding people in the 3 pavilions in the past 2 years. Do you know that the old guys in the Elder Council have given you a code name? Shangguan Tianhua laughed. What code name? Lin Yi asked in surprise. The Golden Generation, Shangguan Tianhua said with a smile. Lin Yi was speechless. There was even a code name. The elders in the Elder Council were really free. Although it's exaggerated, it's not too outrageous. Your batch of newcomers is already very outstanding. In addition to you, Xiao Ran and Ming Tong are also not bad. Su Lingchong's strength just happened to improve by leaps and bounds in the past 2 years, so he is also the representative of your golden generation. There are also people like Yu Jia who all look good. There's also someone called Ma Dangchong, who has been very eye-catching recently. Do you think these people are qualified to be part of the golden generation? Shangguan Tianhua named one by one. The fact that he could remember the names of these people was already an affirmation of their strength. In the past, although 1 or 2 amazing people would appear from time to time in the 3 pavilions, there would never be a situation like this where all of a sudden, especially someone at Lin Yi's level. It was rare to see someone like this in hundreds of years. Read the full text because of the sudden emergence of the golden generation. Most people were very optimistic about the prospects of the 3 pavilions of the North Island. When the golden generation really grew up, the 3 pavilions of the North Island would be revitalized again. Among these people, I only know about Xiao Ran's background. He was indeed a rare talent, and he had a well-developed hairstyle. As for the others, I don't know much about them. Maybe it's because of some kind of fortuitous encounter, but I always feel that their strength is a little strange. Lin Yi commented truthfully. Haha, aren't you the same? Shangguan Tianhua couldn't help but laugh. It feels completely different when it's on me and when it's on someone else. Maybe it's just my imagination. Lin Yi said with a shrug. Shangguan Tianhua smiled non-committally. At this time, the taste of the tea had become extremely light. When drinking tea, one should know when to stop. Furthermore, he was obviously reluctant to reveal his heart again. This was his favorite. He immediately said to Shangguan Laner, Little Lun, take Lin Yi to the study and pick a piece of calligraphy. Okay. Shangguan Laner immediately pulled Lin Yi and ran into the study. A moment later, Lin Yi came out with a strange expression. He carried a long and exquisite scroll on his back. He bowed deeply to Shangguan Tianhua and said, Thank you for your kindness, Pavilion Master. This disciple will take his leave first. You can come often in the future. There aren't many people who can make this old man reveal his heart. You're one of them. Shangguan Tianhua nodded lightly. Then he added, Of course, it's not every time. There aren't many of these left. Yes, I have your words. This disciple will definitely not be polite with you. Lin Yi smiled and then was easily sent out of the door by Shangguan Laner and Little Curly Bear. When Shangguan Laner came back after sending Lin Yi off, Shangguan Tianhua saw her sneaky and guilty look. He immediately became suspicious and asked Little Lun, which piece of calligraphy did you choose for him? Oh, it's that mantra. Shangguan Laner said vaguely, avoiding his gaze. What mantra? Grandpa has written more than a dozen mantras. Which one did you choose? Shangguan Tianhua suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. It's the one that gives people a headache. Shangguan Laner pouted. Gives people a headache? Shangguan Tianhua felt more and more uneasy. He suddenly trembled and said in shock, Little Lun, you didn't give him the 10,000 words mantra, did you? Yes. Shangguan Laner shrunk her neck and nodded. When Shangguan Tianhua heard this, he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, That's our Shangguan family's ancestral knowledge, not to mention a whole 10,000 words. Grandpa worked hard for an entire month to copy it down. You said yourself that you can choose as you wish from the study. You are the Soaring Sky Pavilion's Pavilion Master. You won't go back on your word, right? Shangguan Laner muttered. Go back on my word. How can I go back on my word when I've already given it away? Shangguan Tianhua shook his head speechlessly. He could only shake his head and sigh. Ai, it's true that girls are extroverted. We haven't done anything yet, and you're already thinking of ways to trick your own grandfather. When did I trick you? Shangguan Laner suddenly blushed a little. She ran over and hugged Shangguan Tianhua's arm and said, coquettishly, Little junior brother isn't an outsider. It doesn't matter if I give him the 10,000 words mantra. Okay, he's not an outsider. Shengguan Tianhua rubbed his granddaughter's head and said with emotion, "To be honest, this child is really extraordinary. I thought he would be the next Ram Jia. I didn't expect that I still underestimated him after seeing him today. I regret not accepting him as a disciple. It's not too late now. Anyway, little junior brother hasn't formally become a disciple yet. Should I go and tell him now?" Shangguan Laner's eyes lit up. If Lin Yi could become her grandfather's disciple, their relationship would be even closer. Of course, she was happy to see it happen. There's no need for that. I'm just saying, if Lin Yi really becomes my disciple, it won't be a good thing for him. At least, I can't help him reach the nascent soul stage in 2 years. The only thing I can do now is to give him some pointers. Shangguan Tianhua shook his head slightly. That's right. Okay. Shangguan Laner couldn't help but be a little disappointed. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and asked, "Grandfather, are you preparing this for little junior brother?" Yes. Shangguan Tianhua nodded. Really? How could you be willing to let little junior brother drink the dew? Shangguan Laner suddenly became more and more surprised. There were only a few people in the world who could make her grandfather take out the dew. No matter how she thought about it, she didn't think that little junior brother had this qualification. After all, even Ram Jia had never received such treatment. A grown girl can't be kept at home. Since little Shangguan Laner is so eager to let him drink the dew, what can I say? Shangguan Tianhua looked at Shangguan Laner mischievously and said with a smile, "To be continued." Chapter 46-25. Grandpa, what are you talking about? Shanghai Laner suddenly blushed. She turned around and ran away in embarrassment. After a while, she came back with a small wooden box in her hand. She handed it to Shanghai Tianhua and said, "This is a gift from little junior brother. You can open it and see for yourself." Oh, Shanghai Tianhua opened the wooden box. There were 2 things inside. One was an exquisite spirit jade bottle, and the other was wrapped in a red cloth. Shanghai Tianhua's eyes suddenly lit up. Star ink milk? Infant ginseng? This boy is really extravagant. Whether it was the star ink milk or the infant ginseng, they were both good things that were hard to find in the world. This was not because Shanghai Tianhua's level was high. Even if it was useless to him, he could always give it to others. Not to mention that the infant ginseng and star ink milk could be used to refine higher level pills. The value of Lin Yi's return this time was probably not below his due sharp spirit tea. This is not a problem for little junior brother. Shanghai Laner proudly raised her chin. Haha, let's see how far he can go in the future. All right, little Lon, since you've given him the 10,000 character mantra, you should make a new copy for yourself. This is our Shangguan family's heirloom. We can't just disappear just like that. Shangguan Tianhua looked at his granddaughter with an amused look on his face. Ah, an entire 10,000 words. Grandpa, are you joking? Shanghai Laner suddenly felt bad. I'm not joking. This important task will be handed over to you. Write it slowly. Although Shanghai Tianhua had a smile on his face, his tone was not negotiable. Oh, Shanghai Laner was completely listless. She had no choice but to walk towards the study room. 10,000 words incantation. How long would it take to write it? All right, let this girl sharpen her temperament. Shanghai Tianhua smiled and looked back at the things Lin Yi had given him. He couldn't help but recall what Lin Yi had just said. He suddenly snapped his fingers and said, "Find out the information about Su Lingchong and the group of people gathered under him. Arrange for people to keep an eye on them." Lin Yi felt refreshed as he walked out of Hualan House. It wasn't just because he had drunk dew point, but also because he had obtained the 10,000 words mantra. He had only taken a cursory look at it, and he knew that it wasn't something simple. He would find time to study it in the future, and he believed that he would gain something. Returning to Blue Cloud Pavilion, Lin Yi had planned to immediately start refining, but he didn't expect that there would be someone waiting outside the courtyard. This person was none other than Clear Cloud Pavilion's eldest senior brother, Jia Mufan. "Brother Jia, how have you been?" Lin Yi cupped his hands in greeting from afar. "Junior brother Lin, how have you been? You've made me wait for a long time." Jia Mufan welcomed him with a smile. This was the truth. This time he came to visit Lin Yi as soon as the sun rose. Who would have thought that Lin Yi was not at home last night? As the dignified senior brother who was in charge of the inner sanctum, he had to wait outside for 4 hours. This could be considered as a strange anecdote. "Oh, does senior brother Jia need something from me? Come this way, please." Lin Yi quickly invited Jia Mufan into his residence. "Junior brother Lin, you're the most dazzling genius of our Blue Cloud Pavilion. You've been gone for so long. As your senior brother, it's only right for me to come and take a look. What do you think?" Jia Mufan smiled. In fact, with Lin Yi's current strength and status, it was impossible for him to win. When Jia Mufan found out that he had returned, especially after learning that he had crippled a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator with one move, he had planned to rush over as soon as possible yesterday. However, Lin Yi and the others were busy with the gathering. Moreover, they hadn't sent him an invitation, so he had tactfully postponed it until today. "I've troubled you, senior brother Jia. My mission this time was delayed because you helped me cancel it. Moreover, senior brother Lu and senior brother Ku also said that when they had a conflict with Ma Daoqiang, it was all thanks to senior brother Jia's help. I'll remember this favor on their behalf," Lin Yi said seriously. As he spoke, Lin Yi brewed some spiritual tea. Although it wasn't as professional as Shanghai Laner's, and it wasn't a rare spiritual tea like Lu Bianren's, it was still a high-grade spiritual tea. It was refreshing to drink. Jia Mufan shook his head. "Junior brother Lin, you're exaggerating. Lu Bianren and the others are your senior brothers, but they're also my junior brothers. Since I happened to come across this matter, I naturally had to step in and stop it. Otherwise, as the senior brother in charge of the inner sect, I'll be labeled as an incompetent person. Haha, no matter what, I have to thank you, senior brother Jia. It's Blue Cloud Pavilion's fortune to have an inner sect steward like you as our senior brother." Lin Yi smiled. There were only a few people in the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion's upper echelons that he liked, and Jia Mufan was one of them. "Junior brother Lin, based on what you've said, I'll do my best in the future." Jia Mufan laughed. "Speaking of which, junior brother Lin, what do you plan to do next?" "Plans?" Lin Yi looked at Jia Mufan in confusion. "I mean, are you interested in taking up a position like the inner sect steward's second senior brother or something? After all, with great power comes great responsibility." Jia Mufan said meaningfully. "Inner sect steward's second senior brother?" Lin Yi was stunned when he heard that. He asked curiously, "Isn't that Ma Daoqiang's position?" "He's not suitable." Jia Mufan said straightforwardly, "Before you came back, no one could object to him taking this position. But now, how can he still have the face to continue taking this position?" He retreated. Lin Yi immediately understood. This was actually the same as when he fought for the inner sect's #1 residence. Up until now, he didn't see the Blue Cloud Pavilion's upper echelons come out to fart. They all pretended to be deaf and mute about it. Those so-called upper echelons of Blue Cloud Pavilion who supported Ma Daoqiang had probably changed their stance after learning about what happened yesterday. They were really fence-sitters. "To tell you the truth, I made a proposal to the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Elders Guild yesterday to let junior brother Lin be the inner sect steward's second senior brother. In the end, the Elders Guild unanimously approved it. Jia Amufan's tone carried a trace of unconcealable sarcasm. Recalling the behavior of those Blue Cloud Pavilion elders at that time, they were really clowns. They were the ones who jumped up and down to take up the position. Now, they were also the ones who threw stones at Lin when he was down. With such a group of people occupying the upper echelons, it would be really intolerable if the Blue Cloud Pavilion could still prosper. Lin Yi was speechless when he heard that. These people took advantage of his absence to snatch the number 1 residence. He hadn't even settled the score with them yet, but they were already so eager to be fence-sitters. Not bad. Although I know that letting junior brother Lin take this position is definitely a waste of your talent. With your ability, this is also a springboard for transition, Piao Tianwen said. Chapter 46:26. You'll be able to soar through the skies in the future, and this step is just for experience. What do you think, junior brother Lin? Jia Mufan saw that Lin Yi didn't seem interested, and decided to take the role of persuader. I appreciate senior brother Jia's good intentions. I heard that Xiao Ran was able to become the second senior brother of the outer court steward because of senior brother Jia's efforts. You have done your best for all of us, and I am extremely grateful. Lin Yi thanked him sincerely. Then he shook his head and said, But I think I'd better forget about being the second senior brother in charge of the inner sect. You should know that I don't really like these things. It's too troublesome to be entangled with mundane affairs. Lin Yi had a very clear goal for his future development. Moreover, his vision had never been limited to Blue Cloud Pavilion. Although the position of the second senior brother in charge of the inner sect seemed to be good, there would definitely be all kinds of trivial matters. At that time, a lot of energy would be wasted. If he had the time, he might as well focus on his cultivation. Haha, I understand. But this is actually the pavilion master's idea. It's not good for me to refuse directly. Otherwise, it would seem that there's some conflict between me and junior brother Lin. Jia Mufan said with a bitter smile. I see, but I really don't have this intention. Lin Yi paused and then suggested, As far as I know, although senior brother Lu Bianren's strength is a little weak, he's still a senior in Blue Cloud Pavilion with a lot of experience. Moreover, he's experienced in various important positions. As far as I know, he's going to have a breakthrough soon. Why don't you consider him? This. Jia Mufan was a little hesitant. Lu Bianren's qualifications were indeed not bad. However, with his current strength, he obviously did not meet the requirements to be the second senior brother in charge of the inner sect. Any inner sect disciple was in the golden core stage. In theory, to be the second senior brother in charge of the inner sect, one had to be at least in the late golden core stage. However, Lu Bianren was only in the middle golden core stage. Even if he was about to make a breakthrough, he was only at the peak of the middle golden core stage. He was still a long way from reaching the minimum threshold. Given Lin Yi's current strength and status, it was impossible for him to win. If the position of second senior brother of the inner court steward fell into his hands, no one would dare to say anything. However, if it was Lu Bianren, perhaps the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion Elders Guild would be in an uproar, not to mention those ambitious disciples. However, since this was Lin Yi's intention, Jia Mufan couldn't refuse directly. He could only say, All right, then I'll report this matter to Pavilion Master Yu and put Lu Bianren on the list of key disciples to be groomed. The position of second senior brother can be reserved for him. But before that, junior brother Lin needs you to make the transition, because only after you step down from this position can you nominate Lu Bianren. That way, you can stop everyone's mouths and prevent junior brother Lu from suffering too much resistance. All right. Lin Yi thought about it and agreed. He knew that this matter was a little difficult. Even if Lu Bianren was listed as a candidate, if he didn't hold the position in his hands first and allowed someone else to snatch it away, Lu Bianren wouldn't give up the position in the future. If that happened, Lu Bianren wouldn't know how long he would have to wait. Jia Mufan heaved a sigh of relief. If Lin Yi didn't want to be the second senior brother of the inner court steward, it wouldn't matter if he couldn't complete the orders of Yu Jinyang and the Blue Cloud Pavilion Elders Guild. The key was that he would be on tenterhooks. What if the reason why Lin Yi didn't like the second senior brother of the inner court steward was because he liked the eldest senior brother of the inner court steward? Jia Mufan wasn't afraid of others, but he really didn't have the slightest confidence when facing a super genius like Lin Yi. This was the next ram Jia. No matter how pretentious Jia Mufan was, he wouldn't be able to stop Lin Yi's footsteps. Junior brother Lin, you don't like to be entangled in miscellaneous matters. Actually, you don't have to worry about this. You can leave all the miscellaneous matters to me. As for junior brother Lin, you can stay the same as before. There shouldn't be a problem, right? Jia Mufan said with a smile. Then I'll have to trouble senior brother Jia. Lin Yi nodded. Haha, it's no trouble at all. I've always been a workaholic. I used to be the second senior brother of the inner court steward for a long time. These matters are already a walk in the park for me. Jia Mufan smiled and said frankly, actually, it's a blessing for me that junior brother Lin is willing to let go. You should know that a big reason for setting up the position of the second senior brother of the inner court steward is to check and balance me, the eldest senior brother of the inner court steward. Previously, letting an arrogant person like Ma Daicheng sit on that position really gave me a headache. When Lin Yi heard that, he immediately laughed. Ma Daicheng was a person who thought highly of himself. Perhaps he didn't even take Jia Mufan seriously from the start. With such a person going against him in everything, especially when Jia Mufan was the highly anticipated rookie king, no one in Jia Mufan's position would feel good no matter who it was. However, Lin Yi could also see that Jia Mufan was quite obsessed with power, but he didn't care about it at all. It could be said that they were two extremes, but he didn't have any ill feelings towards Jia Mufan because of this. Jia Mufan was actually very good at conducting himself. It wasn't a bad thing for Lin Yi to cooperate with him. It was a pleasant cooperation. After talking about business, Jia Mufan chatted for a while and then got up to leave. Lin Yi politely sent him out and then began his closed-door training. This time, the closed-door training was not for cultivation, but purely for refining elixirs. Not only was the Tiandan Pavilion in urgent need of elixirs, but even the people around Lin Yi also needed it. For example, Lu Bianren was indeed on the verge of breaking through, but without the help of the Jindan Golden Elixir, who knew how long he would be stuck in the bottleneck. With previous experience refining Jindan Golden Elixir and some other elixirs, even the Gathering Soul Golden Elixir was already a piece of cake for Lin Yi. In 5 days, the total number of various elixirs produced finally reached 3 digits, and more than 80% of them were of the best quality. He couldn't help but sigh. The magic pesticide cauldron was really a magical tool for refining elixirs. After finishing the closed-door training, Lin Yi immediately gathered Lu Bianren and the others together. In public, he distributed some elixirs to Lu Bianren for safekeeping. After all, he was the most powerful among them and had always been the most reliable. Lin Yi decided to let Lu Bianren distribute these elixirs on time according to their needs. Otherwise, if they were directly distributed to each of them with Qiao Hongsai's impatience, she might turn around and eat them directly. In fact, the reason why Lin Yi did this was that he had learned a lesson. In the past 2 years, he hadn't heard from anyone in the South Island, so everyone could only rely on themselves. Although their strength was much faster than that of ordinary people, they still lacked the help of elixirs after all. Floating astronomy. Chapter 46, 27. Especially the best quality elixirs that couldn't be bought on the market, which caused the improvement of everyone's strength to be far less obvious than Lin Yi had expected. With everyone's qualifications, if Lin Yi was here in the past 2 years, Xiao Ran and the others would probably have been masters of the Golden Core stage. How could they still be lingering in the foundation establishment stage like now? Lin Yi himself was already at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, and the gap in strength was too big. Not only could these little brothers not be his right-hand men, but they would also become a burden. So, no matter what, Lin Yi had to think of a way to raise everyone's strength as soon as possible. And one of the things he had to do was to ensure a sufficient supply of elixirs. Even when Lin Yi wasn't here, this couldn't be cut off. After arranging everyone, the next thing Lin Yi had to do was to go to Zhongdao. Although the elixirs could be sent by Hongzhong, Lin Yi felt that it was necessary to go in person. On one hand, he might have the opportunity to see Zhang Liju, and on the other hand, it was time to see Tian Chan and Sydney. After making up his mind, Lin Yi first went to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce and asked Hongzhong to send the elixirs first. At the same time, he asked for a Chamber of Commerce pass. With this thing, flying spirit beasts could take off and land at the Zhongdao Pier. Although they still couldn't enter the sky above Zhongdao, it was much more convenient. After coming out of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yi planned to go to the Spirit Beast Farm. This was the place where the 3 pavilions specially trained spirit beasts. Now, the spirit bird had become the overlord of this Spirit Beast Farm, and its life was quite comfortable. Although it didn't have a strong racial talent, it couldn't stand its high level. There were only a few spirit beasts of the nascent soul stage in the entire North Island Spirit Beast Farm. If any spirit beast dared to cause trouble for it, it could use its speed to make the other party dizzy. Who could afford to provoke it? But before that, Lin Yi had to go to see Laner first to say goodbye to her, and at the same time he had to give her the elixirs he had just refined. After all, she was also one of his people. It was her business if she had a good background, but Lin Yi couldn't leave her out of it. However, what Lin Yi did not expect was that he would meet Laner on the way. She smiled and said hello from afar. Hey, what a coincidence. I was just about to look for you. Hee, I was just about to look for you. Shangguan Laner was overjoyed when she saw Lin Yi. She skipped over and couldn't hide the joy on her face. Little junior brother, you're going to work again. Work? Why? Lin Yi was stunned. Have you forgotten what your position is? Shangguan Laner rolled her eyes at him. Position? The second senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's inner court? Lin Yi asked curiously. What? You're the Island Flower's personal expert, have you forgotten? Shangguan Laner pouted. Puff! Lin Yi burst into laughter. Then he remembered that when Ning Xuefei came to the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua had given him the position of reception messenger. To put it bluntly, he was the 2 women's personal bodyguard. But this thing had passed. It was almost 2 years ago. Did this temporary position, which was obviously a joke, still count? Well, little junior brother, pack up quickly and follow me to West Island to protect the flower. Shangguan Laner couldn't wait to announce. West Island. Protect the flower? Lin Yi was more and more confused. Yes, it's Ning Xuefei's birthday soon. Shangguan Laner said excitedly and then complained. Because of you, I didn't hear from her before. I didn't go to her birthday last year, but I have to go this year. Little junior brother, you're back. Hee, God is helping me. So that's how it is. Well, I have nothing to pack. When are we leaving? Lin Yi immediately nodded and agreed. He had a good relationship with Ning Xuefei. Since Shanghai Laner had mentioned it, it didn't matter if he agreed. Anyway, there was nothing urgent in Middle Island for the time being. He could go there after coming back from West Island. If it was just a birthday party, it shouldn't take too much time. It's today. After Shanghai Laner finished speaking, she took Lin Yi to Hualan House. Lin Yi had nothing to pack, but she was different. She had prepared a lot of birthday gifts for Ning Xuefei, not to mention a lot of her own things. Of course, these things needed to be carried by Lin Yi, a master of protecting the flower. When they arrived at Hualon House, Lin Yi could only do the hard work, helplessly. When Shanghai Tianhua learned that Lin Yi was willing to protect her, he certainly had no objection. He just smiled and said a few words, then ran to the study to write, as if he was not worried about his granddaughter going to West Island at all. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel strange. Did he have 100% trust in him, or did he arrange other means of protection? Shanghai Laner was the little princess of North Island. If she went to West Island with only him to protect her, it didn't seem right? It wasn't until Shanghai Laner said goodbye to Shanghai Tianhua that Shanghai Tianhua solved Lin Yi's doubts. This time, Shanghai Laner's accompanying master, although he was the only one on the surface, there were two extremely powerful figures in both strength and status. One of them was Shanghai Tianhua's trusted subordinate, Lan Tiefu, the eldest senior brother in charge of the inner core of Soaring Pavilion. The other one was quite familiar to Lin Yi, Ram Jia, the master of Law Enforcement Hall. Although there were only 3 people on the surface and in the dark, and they looked very weak, any one of them was a powerful figure who could make the whole 3 pavilions of North Island tremble. Especially Ram Jia, who was recognized as a person who would definitely reach the top of North Island in the future. No wonder Shanghai Tianhua was so at ease. With the protection of the 3 of them, if Shanghai Laner could still have an accident, it could only prove one thing. A force was going to wage a full-scale war against North Island. Of course, this kind of thing was impossible. Although the 3 pavilions of North Island had never been strong, they dominated an island after all. No matter how powerful the force was, if they wanted to challenge it, they had to think it over first. After saying goodbye to Shanghai Tianhua, they immediately set off from Walanju and went to the pier of North Island. Shanghai Laner walked in the front, her steps light and cheerful, followed by little Curly Bear, who dragged a giant pair of scissors and looked around unkindly from time to time, looking like a loyal lackey protecting his master. The last one was Lin Yi, who looked helpless, with all kinds of bags piled up into a hill. Looking at his miserable condition, he was not a master of flower protection, but a ready-made free coolie. As for the other 2 bodyguards, they'd said that they'd be protecting Lin Yi from the shadows, and naturally wouldn't appear in sight. Otherwise, Lin Yi's life would have been a little easier. At least he'd have 2 more bags to carry. Chapter 46:28. After a while, 2 people and 1 pet finally arrived at the pier of the North Island. Looking at the huge treasure ship docked in front of them, Lin Yi couldn't help but gasp. Although he had seen the treasure ship of the Morning Star Academy of the East Continent in the sea area of the South Continent before, it was the first time for him to see it at such a close distance. No matter how strong he was, he would inevitably feel shocked when he saw this giant on the sea. The huge treasure ship in front of him gave Lin Yi the feeling that it was not inferior to the aircraft carriers in the secular world that easily weighed tens of thousands of tons. But it was different. The whole treasure ship was integrated. Although there was no technological civilization, the design and craftsmanship were obviously better. He had to sigh that the former powerful blacksmiths of the Heaven Stage Island were really ingenious. When Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner arrived, the pier of the North Island was busy. Because the huge treasure ship was docked, other ships couldn't get close at all. People could only watch from a distance for the time being, watching the disciples of the 3 pavilions moving things to the huge treasure ship one after another, whispering to each other. This time they used the huge treasure ship to travel to the West Island, of course, not only for Shanghai Laner. Going to Ning Xuefei's birthday party was at most an excuse, but the main purpose was to strengthen the communication between the North Island and the West Island. Although no heavyweight big shots were sent, the gifts arrived before they arrived. The things that were being moved onto the giant treasure ship were all precious gifts. Not only did they represent the entire 3 pavilions of the North Island, but also almost all the high-level officials of the 3 pavilions had their own expressions. The giant treasure ship was filled with gifts for the island master of West Island and Ning Shuifei. The North and the West Islands had always been on good terms, and the high-level officials of the 2 islands generally had a good relationship. This time, not only did Shangguan Tianhua and the other big shots prepare gifts, even the extremely mysterious North Island Lord, who had been in closed-door cultivation all this time, was not left behind. He had specially asked someone to bring a generous gift. It seems that there are a lot of people going to the West Island this time. Lin Yi was slightly stunned when he saw this scene. He thought it was just to accompany Shanghai Laner to a birthday party, but he didn't expect that the situation in front of him was clearly sending a delegation, with at least 100 people. But when he thought about it carefully, it wasn't strange, because merely the number of people that this enormous treasured vessel could carry was absolutely no less than 3 digits. It was the first time for Lin Yi to board a giant treasure ship, but Laner, who was beside him, was very familiar with it. There was even a special room on the ship for her. Lin Yi's room was right next to hers. They were separated by a door, and when the door was opened, it was directly connected to the suite. If she wanted to visit, she didn't even need to walk through the corridor. After putting down the small mountain of gifts, Lin Yi did not stay in the room. Instead, he prepared to walk around. He had to familiarize himself with the structure of the ship first. Otherwise, he would be caught off guard if he were to encounter an accident midway. Of course, Shangguan Laner and Little Curly Bear would not be idle. Since Lin Yi wanted to walk around, they were naturally happy to accompany him. Shangguan Laner simply became a tour guide for Lin Yi. She knew a little bit about the various structures and related uses of the giant treasure ship. After a tour, it was enough for Lin Yi to have a preliminary understanding of the giant treasure ship. Uncanny workmanship. The forger who can make such a treasure ship is absolutely an unparalleled genius in the world. After a tour, Lin Yi kept praising it, and at the same time he couldn't help but think of the King of Rags. He could see that this guy's talent in forging was also extraordinary. If he could accumulate enough experience, it was not impossible for him to reach such a height in the future. While talking and laughing, Lin Yi and Shangguan Laner returned to the original place where they boarded the ship. At this time, the goods on the dock were almost moved, and all the people who were going to West Island were also in their places. They were ready to set sail immediately. The last group of people came from the end of the cloud climbing ladder. Lin Yi suddenly found that there was a deliberately empty circle in the middle. After taking a closer look, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. There were 2 people in the middle. Although one of them was dressed in black, and there was nothing unusual about his behavior, and he didn't even say a word from beginning to end, he still shone brightly. This was Ram Jia, the first person of the new generation in the North Island. Inside the empty circle, there was another person besides Gong Yangjia. This person was dressed in a large blue robe from head to toe. From his appearance, he looked to be a youth that was less than 30 years old. However, the temperament that leaked out from between his brows was much more peaceful than Gong Yangjia's. If Gong Yangjia was said to be proud and aloof, pushing people thousands of miles away, then this person was far from making people shrink back at the sight of him. Rather than saying that this person was peaceful, it would be better to say that he was ordinary. In a crowd, it would be very difficult to attract attention. But even so, the people around him consciously made way for him and gave him treatment no less than that of Ramjia. This was Lan Tiefu, the eldest senior brother, who was in charge of the inner core of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Seeing him for the first time, Lin Yi could not help but look at him a few more times curiously. Lan Tiefu occupied such a key core position, which was enough to show that his strength must be extraordinary, and he should not be much worse than Ramjia. The position of the eldest senior brother, who was in charge of the inner core of Soaring Sky Pavilion, was basically the highest level among the disciples of the 3 pavilions, and it could not be much worse. While Lin Yi was looking at Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu, the two of them also looked at Lin Yi in unison, but then they withdrew their eyes with a serious and silent expression, as if these things in front of them had nothing to do with them. After a while, they disappeared in the crowd without a trace. Didn't they say that they're protecting me in secret? Why have they appeared so openly? Lin Yi couldn't help but murmur. The two weren't showing off at all, but from the looks of the people around them, it was obvious that everyone knew that they were on the boat already, and that they'd already been noticed by the people with ulterior motives. The two of them have always been like this. Even if they are asked to do things secretly, they will never deliberately hide their tracks. Being sneaky is not their style. Little junior brother, don't think that senior brother Lan is as cold as senior brother Ram. In fact, his arrogance is no less than senior brother Ram's. This is what my grandfather said. Shangguan Lan explained. I see. Lin Yi could not help but laugh when he heard that, but it was not incomprehensible. Whether it was Ram Jie or Lan Tiefu, they were dragons and phoenixes among men. Their arrogance came from their strong self-confidence, so it was naturally not strange for them to act like this. While he was trying to figure out Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu, Lin Yi suddenly caught a glimpse of two familiar figures from the corner of his eye. When he saw them clearly, he immediately curled his lips. It was actually that idiot Su Lingchong, accompanied by the lackey Kong Mingming. What are they doing here? Are they also going to attend Ning Xuefei's birthday banquet? Lin Yi frowned slightly. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come. R 466. Chapter 46-29. Of course not. Feifei's birthday party is not for such an annoying person to attend. Shangguan Laner pouted with a look of disgust. She had never liked hypocritical and despicable people like Su Lingchong. Especially after the incident at her birthday party, she hated this guy even more. Q0. Not only Shangguan Laner, but even the little curly bear made a face at Su Lingchong with disdain when it saw him. Then it dragged its huge scissors and rushed over. This little guy thought that the last time was not clean enough, so it wanted to use the same trick again. When he saw Lin Yi and Shangguan Laner standing together from afar, Su Lingchong's expression couldn't help but become slightly complicated, especially when he saw the little curly bear's pair of enormous scissors. His expression instantly became extremely unsightly. This pair of enormous scissors was the culprit that had scared him awake from his nightmares countless times. However, Su Lingchong didn't dare to do anything to the little coiled bear at this time, and he didn't dare to have a head-on conflict with Lin Yi. Even Ma Dongqiang, a master in the middle stage of the Yuanying stage, was crippled in one move. Although Su Lingchong felt that he was much stronger than Ma Dongqiang, he still couldn't help but feel nervous when facing Lin Yi. Seeing that the little curly bear was about to rush over, Su Lingchong quickly hid as far away as he could. In the blink of an eye, he and Kong Mingming disappeared into the crowd. From the looks of it, even if they had the guts, they definitely wouldn't dare to appear in front of Lin Yi for a while. The reason why Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming appeared on this ship was that they were members of the special envoy group to celebrate Ning Xuefei's birthday. But in fact, they had a secret mission. Of course, this mission did not come from the 3 pavilions of the North Island, but from the center. As the special envoy of the North Island, Su Lingchong couldn't leave the North Island easily, but now that he had Zhong Pingyang, who was on the same level as him, he could naturally come out to do missions. Only by doing missions. Only then would they have the chance to get credit and climb up the ranks as fast as possible, trampling Pinliang under their feet again. As for how they managed to sneak onto the ship, with Child Su's strength and background, this kind of thing was really not difficult. There were more than 100 people in the West Island's diplomatic corps. It was easy to find an excuse to insert 2 of them into the organization. Su Lingchong did not want to have a head-on conflict with Lin Yi, especially since the mysterious man had specifically warned him not to touch Lin Yi. Otherwise, he would have to bear all the consequences. Under such circumstances, if Su Lingchong still dared to provoke Lin, then he would have to be a fool to provoke him. As a result, his current principle was to avoid conflict with Lin if he could avoid it. The further he hid, the better. It didn't matter if he was a coward because the situation was stronger than him. In the face of Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming's behavior, Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner felt a little surprised. Although these two guys had suffered losses before, they had never been so sensible. Did they suddenly become clear-minded? What the hell are these two guys doing? Lin Yi frowned and muttered. His intuition told him that it was definitely not so simple, and there might be some reasons behind it. Kong Mingming was nothing, but Su Lingchong was not the kind of guy who would easily bow his head. Of course, Lin Yi did not spend more time to figure out Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming. His level determined his vision. If he had the time, he might as well study Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu, who were the existences that he needed to pay attention to now. All the personnel and materials were in place. With a series of low and deep horns, the giant treasure ship officially set sail. As the giant object that covered the sky and the sun slowly sailed away, the huge North Island pier was suddenly empty. All kinds of ships waiting around rushed to enter the harbor, and the North Island pier then returned to its former appearance. Standing on the deck of the treasure ship, Ding Ning felt the sea breeze that was gradually becoming stronger. Seeing the whole North Island becoming smaller and smaller, Lin Yi suddenly had an inexplicable excitement of the beginning of a trip in his heart. This feeling was the same as traveling around the world on a luxury cruise in the secular world. Huge, sturdy, and comfortable, the treasure ship could be said to have all the advantages of a sea ship. In particular, it could ride the wind and waves to fight against natural obstacles, just like a moving fortress on the sea. Everything had a shortcoming, and that was speed. In fact, the speed of the treasure ship was not slower than that of other ordinary sea ships. As long as there was a steady stream of spiritual qi to replenish the energy of the magic formation, the extreme speed that it broke out could instantly kill any sea ship. At this extreme speed, ordinary sea ships would have automatically disintegrated, let alone ride the wind and waves. However, Lin Yi had long been used to the speed of the spirit bird. No matter how the giant treasure ship broke out with all its strength, it obviously could not reach such an exaggerated level. The distance between the North Island and the West Island was not too far. If it was the spirit bird, with its current speed of the nascent soul realm, it would take at most 1 day to get there. But if it was a giant treasure ship, it would be different. Even if it sailed at full speed regardless of the cost, it would be impossible to get there without half a month. Junior brother, the sunrise on the sea is very beautiful. How about getting up early tomorrow to watch the sunrise? Shanghai Laner suddenly suggested with great interest. Watch the sunrise? Hearing this, Lin Yi was stunned. He hadn't had this kind of leisure to play and relax for a long time. It was good to take the opportunity to relax, so he immediately nodded and agreed. Okay, no problem. After the two agreed, it was getting dark on the deck. After staying on the deck for a while, they returned to their respective rooms. Lin Yi was busy meditating and practicing, while Shanghai Laner was resting and sleeping. It was rare for her to come out to play, so she would not be stupid to practice. Early the next morning, before Lin Yi, who was meditating and practicing here, got up, Shanghai Laner next door was already eagerly knocking on the door. Lin Yi estimated the time. It should be less than 4 o'clock, right? The two came to the deck with the little curly bear. Looking at the darkness in front of them, they couldn't even see their fingers. Lin Yi was suddenly speechless. Fortunately, the guardrail of the treasure ship was high. Otherwise, they would accidentally touch the sea. He quickly sensed with his divine awareness. Wait, the rising sun will appear soon. Shanghai Laner was very excited, and even the little curly bear was jumping up and down beside her. Lin Yi was really afraid that this little guy would fall into the sea. Not long after Shanghai Lena said this, as expected, the distant horizon soon turned red, although there was only a little bit of faint red light at the beginning. This ray of light was very dazzling in the dark environment. From the moment it appeared, the red light quickly grew and soon dyed the sky red. The outline of the rising sun gradually became clearer, and it was reflected in one's eyes bit by bit. It was exuding a vigorous energy that inspired people's hearts, intoxicating them and causing them to think deeply. To be continued. Chapter 4630. Looking at the beautiful scene in front of him, Lin Yi's heart completely calmed down. Unconsciously, he had a long-lost sense of security. He had experienced so many things in South State. Although he had been practicing and improving himself, Lin Yi could clearly feel that there was a lingering impetuosity in his heart. In fact, it was not difficult to find the root cause. Practice was about tension and relaxation. During the 1.5 years in South State, especially after being hunted by West Mountain sect, he had never been completely relaxed. Once nerves were tense for too long, there would always be sequelae. This was a time bomb. At first glance, it seemed inconspicuous, but it might make people pay a heavy price at any time. However, even with Lin Yi's temperament, he could only suppress this impetuosity, but there was no way to completely eradicate it. Originally, after returning to North Island, Lin Yi planned to relax for a while and release his pressure. Unfortunately, Tiandan Pavilion was in urgent need of elixirs, so he could only hurry up to make elixirs. As soon as he finished making elixirs, he was asked by Shanghai Laner to be her bodyguard. Lin Yi thought that if he wanted to really rest and relax, he would have to wait until he came back from West Island. Unexpectedly, after watching the sunrise on a whim today, the trace of impetuosity in his heart suddenly disappeared, which was a pleasant surprise. He glanced at Shanghai Laner and the small curly bear next to him. At the moment, one person and one pet were completely intoxicated in the beautiful scenery of the rising sun. It seemed that even their eyes were about to melt. Lin Yi smiled slightly. Enjoying the beautiful sunrise on the sea was indeed a great pleasure in life. Lin Yi was about to enjoy it again, but he suddenly had a very unnatural feeling. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he always felt that there was a pair of eyes staring at him in the dark, but he couldn't find the owner of this gaze. Lin Yi's heart moved, and he quietly released his divine senses. With the strength of his current divine senses, it was enough to cover the whole treasure ship. However, after he carefully scanned back and forth 3 times, he suddenly found a surprising fact. However, he suddenly discovered a shocking fact. He couldn't lock onto this observer. This time Lin Yi was shocked. He was no longer in the mood to watch the sunrise. This time in the West Island mission, the top management of the 3 pavilions symbolically sent 3 elders, and the others were not particularly outstanding masters. There were only a few people who could completely avoid the perception of Lin Yi's divine senses. Those who could do this, at least, would not be the kind of people like Su Lingchong. Although the other party was a nascent soul stage expert, if he dared to use his spiritual sense to monitor Lin Yi could pull him out and beat him up in minutes. They were only at the same level of strength, but in reality, they were not on the same level. There's no need to look. It's Ram Jia and Lan Tiefu, the ghostly thing suddenly said. What? 2 people? Lin Yi was immediately overwhelmed with shock. He could guess that this person was probably one of the 2 of them, but he completely didn't expect that both of them would be staring at him at the same time. Moreover, he could only rely on his intuition to barely discover one of them. The powerful divine sense that he thought was useless in front of the other party. Yes, it's 2, the ghostly thing confirmed. Then which one did I sense? Lan Tiefu? Lin Yi was stunned and speculated. In his opinion, Lan Tiefu's strength must be slightly inferior to Ram Jia's. then the one he sensed must be him. But even so, it was not simple. This senior brother who was in charge of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion was really not simple, since he could completely hide from his spiritual sense. No, the one you sensed was Ramjia. Lan Tiefu's strength is even more unfathomable, and he's even stronger than Ramjia. The ghostly thing's tone was also a little weird. Stronger than Ramjia? How is that possible? Lin Yi suddenly froze. Ramjia was a super genius appointed by Shanghai Tianhua. He was recognized as the first person of the new generation in the North Island. How could Lan Tiefu's strength be stronger than his? Wouldn't that be unworthy of his name? I also think it's a little weird, but it's the truth. It seems that the 3 major pavilions in the North Island aren't as simple as the outside world says. They're really hidden dragons and crouching tigers, the ghostly thing sighed. The ghostly thing sighed. Even in its eyes, Gong Yangjie could be considered a super genius that was hard to come by in 100 years. Now, an even stronger Lan Tiefu had suddenly appeared. The foundation of such experts was truly not to be underestimated. Lin Yi was shocked speechless. He did not expect the confidant of Shanghai Tianhua to be so strong that even Ramjia could be suppressed by him. It could be seen that the title of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion was not given for nothing. Although Jia Mufan was not simple, he was far inferior to the unfathomable Lan Tiefu. This alone was enough to see the huge gap between Rising Sky Pavilion and Blue Cloud Pavilion. Their foundations were not on the same level at all. Rising Sky Pavilion was able to dominate the North Island's overall situation purely because of its strength. Blue Cloud Pavilion could not compare. Then what's the strength of this Lan Tiefu? Lin Yi could not help but ask curiously. No matter what, he was the second senior brother of the inner core of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In terms of position, he was also on the same level as the other party. Lin Yi wanted to know the gap between him and the other party. It's meaningless even if you know. It's better not to say it. The ghost kept him in suspense. Lin Yi was stunned again, and he was even more shocked. The ghost's words were very clear. He was not on the same level as the other party at all. Once he revealed Lan Tiefu's true strength, he was afraid that he would be shocked. At first, he thought that even if the other party was strong, he would not be too ridiculously strong. At most, he would be at the mysterious ascension stage. It should be known that the mysterious ascension stage was already the mainstay of the top 3 pavilions. If a senior brother of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion was stronger than this, then there was no point in the top management. However, the ghost's attitude was clearly telling him that Lan Tiefu's strength was not just at the mysterious ascension stage. Otherwise, there was no need to keep him in suspense. Is he as strong as you at your peak, senior? Lin Yi asked cautiously. He was really shocked this time. His evaluation of Lan Tiefu had suddenly jumped to above the mountain opening stage. Could this guy be a master of the earth opening stage? Or a higher level, the sea splitting stage? If someone said that the strength of the inner core of Rising Sky Pavilion could reach above the mountain opening stage before this, Lin Yi would definitely scoff at it. However, after personally experiencing it now, his previous understanding of the entire North Island had changed. The strength of the North Island was not as weak as the rumors said. In fact, he was simply hiding his strength. It was just that few people knew about it. Aren't you talking nonsense? If he's stronger than me, then how can I perceive him so easily? The ghost said speechlessly. Oh! Lin Yi let out a breath of relief. If this thing was saying that the opponent was stronger than him, then he'd be in for a real scare. Floating astronomy. Chapter 46:31. But at the same time he was somewhat shocked. Not only was he shocked by Lan Tiefu, but he also couldn't help but speculate about the strength of that ghostly thing. It was even stronger than Lan Tiefu. What kind of existence was that? Suppressing the wild thoughts in his mind, Lin Yi was no longer in the mood to watch the sunrise. Knowing that there were two pairs of eyes staring at him, he suddenly felt uncomfortable, as if there were two powerful spirit beasts staring at him in the jungle. The invisible pressure made him breathless. However, the jade pendant didn't give off any warning, which meant that Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu didn't have any malicious intentions. Perhaps they were just here to protect him in secret under the orders of Shanghai Tianhua. This was the only thing that comforted Lin Yi. Sailing calmly on the boundless sea, facing the same scenery on the sea, after experiencing the initial excitement, the rest of the journey became boring. Lin Yi didn't mind it. He could endure for more than half a year in the sunless 5-poison swamp, let alone a voyage of half a month. But Shanghai Laner and little Curly Bear couldn't endure it. They had nothing to do every day, so they came to find Lin Yi. From time to time, they would pester him to tell them about their previous experiences, treating it as listening to stories to relieve their boredom. Shanghai Laner actually wasn't that interested in Lin Yi's adventure in the South Continent. What she was really interested in was the secular world. After listening to Lin Yi talk about so many things in the secular world, she couldn't help but have an idea. One day, she must go to the secular world to have fun. Otherwise, she would only spend the rest of her life mediocre on the Heaven Stage Island. What a pity! According to the voyage schedule, the giant ship would be sailing on the sea for half a month. Apart from the first 2 days when the ship swayed back and forth, Lin Yi had almost completely turned into Shanghai Laner's storyteller. He couldn't help but sigh. This girl's interest in the secular world was really extraordinary. Even the most trivial things could make her excited for a long time, and she would chase after Lin Yi to get to the bottom of it. This situation lasted until the 10th day. Lin Yi was telling Shanghai Laner about his career as an assassin. Suddenly, a crew member came to report that there was a thick fog up ahead. "I can't go any further." Lin Yi was shocked. He hurriedly brought Shanghai Laner and little Curly Bear to the deck to check on the situation. At this moment, many people had already gathered outside. Ram Jie, Lan Tiefu, and even Su Lingchong were here. After all, being blocked by the sea fog and unable to move forward was a big matter. Although the giant treasure ship was a moving fortress on the sea, this was only relative to ordinary ships. If it was really trapped in the boundless sea, it would be impossible for it to survive. If they stayed here for too long, not only would their journey be greatly delayed, but there would also be problems with supplies. However, compared to the latter two threats, these were only minor problems. These two threats were the sea beasts and the weather. Although the giant ship would be able to safely deal with the weather 80% of the time, there was still a 20% chance that an accident would occur. Once an accident occurred, it would be a fatal crisis. If they suddenly encountered a super strong sea beast, like the giant electric eel, which was above the sea splitting stage, it would be extremely dangerous. Could the huge treasure ship still be safe and sound? The answer was probably not optimistic. Similarly, if there was extremely bad weather, it was difficult to guarantee that the giant treasure ship would not be in danger. At this moment, all the people that gathered on the deck were slightly anxious. The sea mist itself wasn't terrifying, but they were afraid of what exactly was hidden behind the dense sea mist. Was it nothing, or was it a group of extremely ferocious sea beasts, or was it a monstrous wave that was sufficient to capsize a treasured ship? Seeing Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner appear, everyone spontaneously surrounded them. Nominally, this envoy from West Island was led by 3 elders of the 3 pavilions, but everyone knew that they were just ceremonial officers. The strength of the 3 of them was only at the Yuaning realm. In contrast, their deterrence was even less than that of Lin Yi, the new disciple. What's more, Lin Yi was a master of flower protection, personally appointed by Shanghai Tianhua. He was also the messenger who represented North Island to visit West Island this time, when there was really something that needed to be decided. When something really needed to be decided, he should be the one to make the decision. Special Envoy Lin, the route ahead is all covered by the sea fog. We can't figure out the specific situation at all. If we continue to move forward rashly, I'm afraid there will be danger. What do you think we should do?" One of the elders asked on behalf of everyone. Strength was respected. As elders, they were not necessarily arrogant fools. When it was time to lower their heads, they would lower their heads more quickly than anyone else. After all, they were old and shrewd. When Lin Yi heard the words, he smiled slightly and turned to look at Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu beside him, saying, "I'm just a new junior. Since Hall Master Ram and Senior Brother Lan are here, of course, it's up to them to make the decision." Everyone's eyes immediately focused on the two of them. Of course, the two of them were far above Lin Yi. What they said was naturally more convincing than what Lin Yi said. When Ram Jie and Lan Tiefu heard the words, they both glanced at Lin Yi with some unfathomable meaning in their eyes. Although they were not at the same level, what Lin Yi had done before was enough to impress them. At this time, Lin Yi behaved so tactfully, and anyone would feel good about it. However, both of them looked quite serious at the moment. The sea fog in front of them was extremely thick, and it had reached an extreme level of hindrance to the divine senses. Even experts at their level couldn't overcome it. Even if they weren't like others who couldn't use their divine senses at all, their detection range was still very limited. My divine senses can only cover a radius of 500 feet. Ram Jie only said this, and then he stopped talking. Me too, Lan Tiefu said indifferently. When everyone heard this, their expressions instantly became even more nervous. A perception range of 500 feet was absolutely not enough for sailing, especially for a colossus like the enormous treasured ship. At such a distance, not to mention avoiding danger, they didn't even have the time to notice danger unless they stopped completely. This time, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a slight headache. The perception range of the ghost's divine senses was much larger than theirs, but it was still not enough to guarantee their safety. If they continued to advance rashly, it was equivalent to gambling with the lives of the entire ship. Once something happened, it was very likely that they would be completely annihilated in the end. Since it's like this, then let's set up camp here and wait and see. Lin Yi had no choice but to make a decision. Everyone nodded. This was a method that they had no other choice. Although staying on the sea like this could also be dangerous, it was better to stay still than to move. In this way, no matter what unpredictable situation occurred, at least they would have some time to react. However, the sea is full of danger. Even if we set up camp here, we can't let down our guard. We must strengthen our guard, Lin Yi continued. To be continued, that you're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.